We're live. We're live. We're good. Bring back up the display. Whew. Are y'all with me? All right. Oh my God. I can't wait to move. I can't wait to move. So I'm currently streaming on a VPN. And because of the way the internet in this apartment works, I don't know why it works this way. I had to change my password earlier this morning. And then as I signed into my Google account here to stream, it also flagged me because I'm technically going through Germany, because I can't access this website without going through Germany for whatever reason. And so it made me reset my password, which wasn't already updated on my password manager because I just reset it earlier today. So I had to figure that out. Meanwhile, my headphones died. The stream information on the screen was not good. It was a toesless kind of morning or evening. It's evening. Jeez, I don't even know what time of day it is right now. I can't see. This was, and now my music won't work because I just signed out of my streaming account and into my personal account, and now I'm showing everybody my personal account on stream. Good job. All right, let's get some music going. How is everybody doing? You're watching the salvage video while it interrupts you. Which salvage video? Oh, the what I released last week. That's a good video. That one's good fun. How's everybody's Monday? How were your weekends? Was it good? We had a freaking great weekend. We got to continue moving into our house. It's like, I don't think you could ask for anything better than that. Guess I'm gonna be a YouTube streamer for sure now. Well, we'll see. We're moving into our own home, and that internet will be tailor-made for me instead of just God, lost my camera. I don't know why the camera is so loose. Instead of being just kind of like, there we go. Instead of being whatever kind of internet, I don't know. Internet not made for streaming. We're gonna get some good internet over at the other house, and hopefully Twitch will work a little bit better with us. Yamez, how you doing? Yames, how you doing? It was a weekend for you, Twassittle. Is that a good weekend or a not good? Is that a bad weekend? What do you mean it was a weekend? Despite Friday and a rolled ankle, were you riding Punji? Ooh, loosey goosey. Just want 17.2. 17.1 can just die off already. Please leave us alone. 17.1, we don't want you anymore. You're like the ex that won't stop. You keep coming back to us. Hey citizens, I'm all you've got. You better spend more time with me. We're like, no. 317.2, please. Core gameplay, thank you so much. Thanks for dropping in. How you doing? How's your own content going, by the way? Am I moving into a house in Turkey or the US? Into a house here in Turkey for the next 5 months. A boring weekend. Okay, well, boring weekends are better than bad weekends. Beautiful morning over there. Just chilling, James. Good to hear it. This patch has been rather rough. Yeah, this patch... It's like... Yeah, this patch was just... It was sad. All around just kind of sad. I'm hoping 317.2 can, at the very least, handle some of like the super obvious bugs that popped up. Some of the inventory bugs. The item tracking bugs is freaking... They're terrible. The ship stuff going on. It is not fun. Boring weekends are the best weekends. Yo, like a weekend with nothing going on is... I don't know, I could use one of those one of these days. You had a big surgery, so you haven't posted in 2 months. Oof. That's rough. I hope the surgery recovery was good. I hope, everything went smoothly and it wasn't too much pain after the fact, and whatever you got the surgery for was solved. You just got into the game a week ago and it's been a rough learning curve. Yeah, this game is it's a tough one to learn. if you ping me in the Discord server, I'd be happy to run through and show you a little bit on stream. If you're willing to, we can maybe do that next week. On the light side, your cutlass is duped. Yeah, the duplication glitches are something special. Those are, I have like 2 Carracks, 2 MSRs, 2 Mustangs, 2 Cutlass, like enough. I only want 1. Star Citizen living of this world, materialistic desires. I only desire reputation and Pico. It's the first patch you've played in a year or so, and it seemed pretty smooth aside from usual bugs. See, now you're used to a year ago. I guess a year ago wasn't terrible, but like we know Star Citizen when it was bad. And in the last year, maybe 2 years, it's definitely gotten to be easier to play. And I think we gotten a little spoiled. Not to say that we don't deserve it to be easier to play. I mean, when I say spoiled, I don't mean that it shouldn't be better. I just mean that it's you get a little bit of a disconnect between just conversations about before and conversations about now. They're giving you free ships and you're complaining. I wouldn't mind those free ships, or actually I wouldn't be complaining if the free ships actually worked. I can't even claim any of them. You weren't riding, you stepped off the helo at work wrong early on Friday, then saw the news around noon, spent that night drinking through both with friends, and it made the weekend better. The news Friday, yeah. Oh god. For those who don't know, I am running a fundraising event next Monday with a couple of other Star Citizen streamers. We're getting more of the news out in support of women's rights, reproductive rights in America after what has recently happened. It's not what this stream is about, but as Punji brought it up, I thought I'd let people know. Anybody who would like to support, people have reached out to me. Please feel free to get in touch with me or Mrs. Tomato if you're interested in helping with that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just want to let everybody know. Soon we'll be moved in and can chill. Yeah, we've already started to kind of enjoy it. We've gotten a lot of the furniture made, and we think we're going to move in tomorrow. So really looking forward to relaxing in the next couple of weeks here. Can you provide a better answer than what the devs did to get something as small as a bullet travel across a server? I personally cannot, because I don't know more than the devs. In fact, I don't even know anywhere near as much as the devs. Anything I say will be just coming from them, basically, unfortunately. But I'll try to do my best today. Most of the stuff that we're seeing on the screen here, we're going to be going over this diagram of server meshing and the things that are bringing us here. This was made by Unobtainium. It is a post on the Spectrum, which is the official forums for the game. If anybody would like to access this and look into it and like follow along for yourself or use it for your own information, exclamation point meshing, I believe, on either chat will give you a link to it, and you can see it there. Let's see. Everything went good, better every day. That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear it. Like I said, today is not the day to express your political disagreements here on the stream. I was letting people know about an event I'm running. I could care less about how you personally feel about it. Can confirm that bullets won't travel across the server unless they update the projectile lifetime values. Yeah, we need some old aged bullets. I'd like to have my bullets with gray hairs. I want to shoot a bullet from Stanton, or sorry, from Hurston to ArcCorp, and and find it with gray hairs on ArcCorp. Little wrinkles. Hope you're streaming for a while. I have to join a meeting now. We should be on for a couple hours, yeah. As long as this is, it's pretty long. Like I said, though, this is a community post made on the official forum by Unobtainium. And he's made this before. I've seen an old version of this that wasn't interactive like this. So this one I'm excited to go through. I skipped some of the introductory stuff because it's a lot of words. I just wanted to jump into like the major sections. And then as we go through them, I'll pull up like videos and references if I remember any that CIG has put out themselves. I've got a couple of videos here in a playlist I'm putting together. It's kind of like the Road to Server Meshing playlist. I can share that link to chat later as well. But we'll jump into these a little bit just to get some more context. Devs answered the question years ago when they said that they have artificial bullet and laser decay and ranges to prevent things from happening. Plus the I'm just imagining somebody getting hit by a stray Idris railgun round, like millions of excuse me, millions of kilometers across the verse, and you just get nailed by by a round. Is the command not working? Come on now. Come on, command. Meshing. No? Was it just mesh? What the heck? Now we gotta... gosh. Alright, behind the scenes tour. Let's see why this isn't working. I have to log in? Get out of here. Take me to my dashboard. Take me away! Wow, Stream Elements is going crazy with the links over on Twitch. Stream Elements just talking to themselves. See, this is... everything is broken because I'm on a VPN. I don't know I don't know if they... There we go. Come on. Let me in, bub. Whoa, hey, okay, come on. Why you gotta put me on blast like that? Just show all of my YouTube accounts. I hate this one PC stream crap. This is not about it. Whoop, whoop. What's on the screen? All right, chatbot. Why aren't you telling people about meshing? The command is right there. Why isn't it working? Okay, well, I'm just gonna be the bot this time. And I'll just post the message in there myself. Everybody pretend that Space Tomato is a bot. Oh, okay, there we go. There we go, now Stream Elements is getting it, cool. Thanks. Thanks, buddy. Gotta use 2 PCs. Yeah. Seriously, I really do. I mean, I'm supposed to have 2 PCs, but we're in the middle of a move, and maybe I just shouldn't be streaming with 1 PC in the middle of that move, but either way, I'll just delete this stream after. Okay. How many concurrent players do I think we'll be able to see in one instance? Oh boy. I have no way of even putting a guess out there for that. Not a clue, to be honest. It could be 40. It could be 50, it could be 500. I don't know. They don't know. they don't even have any idea of what they're going to be able to achieve. Whoa. It's really going to be down to whatever happens next year, I think, and the following years after that. Bots on break. Bots always on break. It's quite lazy like that. Okay. So let's jump into this. The road to dynamic server meshing. This is a long, meandering road. There's a lot of roadblocks, a lot of pitfalls, a lot of potholes, a lot of tumbleweeds, a lot of the old broken down Toyota pickup trucks, you know, on the side of the road that like you see sometimes and just looks like nobody's ever touched it. But like it's got all 4 wheels, it's just never was driven away from that spot. Just a lot of things that make roads look bad. That's the road we've been following to server meshing. It's been rough, but things are kind of starting to look up. Maybe. So let's jump back all the way to the beginning where it started. Object container streaming was kind of the big focus at first. And during that period, they had a few different major things that they did. The 64-bit conversion thing. Now, again, like I said, I don't actually know this stuff. I am not a developer. I have a small amount of understanding of these things. I recognize them in references, and when they come up, I can give context. But for the most part, I'm just here to kind of give an overview of this document that Unobtainium made. Again, link in the chat, and I'll actually leave it in the description if people are watching this later. I suggest everybody go and watch this themselves. Look at it, read over it. There's a lot of stuff that I'm skipping here. I'm not giving the full picture. I'm just trying to give a generalized view. If I'm a Toby partner, can I ask them to develop drivers for Linux? I can ask. I can't say they'll, as of right now, they're still working on getting the special tomato skins done, new microtransactions. So they might have to finish that up first, but I'll make sure the Linux is, I'll slip in a good word. Don't worry. Just realized you're going through that thing Technus shared last night. That broke my brain. Looking forward to you making it understandable. Yeah, I saw you mention that, Punji. You actually gave me the idea. Not sure I can make it understandable. But anyway, 64-bit. Now this says 64-bit to 32-bit. Have a 64-bit world size to simulate the objects within at the same time. Allow the GPUs to use 32-bit coordinates to render the game. Didn't realize that was a thing, but the whole 64-bit precision thing actually came about before I got really involved with the project. But it was one of the major things that people initially started to realize made this game a little bit different from other games. I know there are other games out there that use 64-bit conversion or precision. It's not a huge deal, but for a space sim on this scale that Star Citizen is going for, it makes a big difference because, having that sort of precision when you're putting objects down and placing them, picking them up and interacting with them, it's big. It's big from what I've seen. My Twitch is on 5 FPS. Yes. Please, I implore you, check us out on the YouTube stream. Twitch is giving a lot of trouble on this internet to me for some reason. My biggest apologies to everybody who's on Twitch for that. But please join us on YouTube. It runs a little better over there. At Bar Citizen of LA this year, Chris Roberts said that they don't know how many users various server meshing stages will allow. Every time something gets to Evocati, they learn new things. Yeah. 64-bit was something the FUD people were saying, were really attached to, saying it was impossible. That was an early one. Kind of funny to hear that. Solution Park is the wrong way around. Down here. 32 to 64. It seems like he was saying that the 64-bit conversion was done, but they wanted to make sure the GPU could still run at 32. I'm guessing that's because this happened first. So this was, this was the move to 64 bits. So first, they moved to 64-bit precision, and then they got to 64 to 32-bit converter, so the GPU could still run like that. Now, the last part of getting object containers initialized, at least what he's saying on this diagram, serialized variables. Instead of going over this, we can actually, you can see that he's got the references up here. That's quite nice. I will probably go through this and find all these references and put them all in this playlist, but I do have the serialized variables video up here, so we can actually take a peek at what CIG was saying back in 2017 was the cause of these variables, why they were doing it, and all that jazz. I won't make us watch the whole video because Around the Verse used to be freaking long. Inside Star Citizen used to be Around the Verse, and that used to be really long. Instead, let's find out where they talk about serialized variables.
Completed the new Quantum Drive 2.0. We've removed the old
this might be a little quiet
Quantum Drive system that controlled things like VFX and sound.
So normally what they did with Around the Verse back in the day is they would do the first half would be like a studio update. They'd talk about here's what happened in Austin, here's what happened in Frankfurt, here's what happened in Los Angeles this month. And then about halfway through or somewhere, they would do this little intermission.
We look forward to giving you more updates in the near future. Have a fantastic rest of the week.
Look for Clive.
See you
Hey,
back in
Jen.
Los Angeles in no time.
Good to see you here. I'm glad you're in here.
So it'll be nice to see people hauling something.
So they used to do this like little intermission. We'd see Chris a lot. We would see Chris almost every week back then. And you know, it would be any combination of people. Sometimes it would be Chris. Sometimes it would be Sandy. I think sometimes it was Brian. It would just, you know, it would change out.
A lot of them, like cargo and say derelict ships, will be easy to see, while others like serialized
So let's listen what they have to say about
variables
this.
are just as critical to the game.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely definitely as critical to the game.
Let me know how
When you're
the volume is,
attempting to build a
guys.
game as large and complex as Star Citizen, it's essential to come up with a new way to streamline the data being transferred between the server and the clients.
And so here to explain exactly how serialized variables will improve our networking capabilities, and of course, most importantly, your Star Citizen experience, let's hear from lead network programmer Clive Johnson.
Good call, Jen.
My name's Clive Johnson. I work for Foundry 42 UK, where I'm the lead network programmer on Star Citizen. Today we're going to talk a little bit about serialized variables. So what are serialized variables? Well, they're not really something that you can see in the game, and ideally, if everything's working the way it should, then they're not something that you really ever need to think about. But they are the answer to a question, which I think is quite important, and that's how do you network a game like Star Citizen? One of the first times I asked myself that question was shortly after I joined the company. I think my first reaction was one of sheer terror. You know, tears, panic, and once it
Gnashing of
calmed
teeth
down and the tears had stopped, you do what any engineer is going to do when faced with an impossible problem. You try and break it down into smaller, impossible problems. When trying to answer the question, how we network Star Citizen, one of the first things we've got to think about is exactly who's going to do the work, who's going to network everything we have in the game. Now, Star Citizen itself is made up of thousands of different elements, and some of these are visible, like planets and ships and players and coffee cups, and others you don't see, like missions or
The old
logic
coffee
of
cup.
signing out landing pads. Each of these elements is really a different type of entity, and each type might be used thousands of times throughout the game, but all the types behave in specific.
Ooh, Ryan, I like the idea of an MMA space sim. Some zero-G MMA, I like it. Daniel, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. We're actually at about 76 deaths, I think, 76 to 77. Just had to stop until I get the 2 PC stream back. If all our data is already working in the persistent database, I don't think a major full wipe is likely. Yeah, they won't. Server meshing won't come until next year, so definitely not 3.18. But I don't know if there will be a wipe at that time. It's possible, but who knows?
Specific ways or have certain uses, and that has to be implemented in the code. And most of them need to work in both single player for Squadron 42 and multiplayer for Star Citizen. In other words, most of them have to be networked.
Hey,
so
he's wearing a Game of Thrones shirt. You remember that show? Ah, remember? Remember how that show ended? Oh my God. Why did they do what they did?
who's going to do the work? Well, currently we've got about 60 engineers coding different parts of the game.
What a
We
freaking
have
disappointment.
only 6 network programmers. Half of these work in Austin on back-end services, and that includes, you know, our core online services such as matchmaking and friends and player authentication. The other half is my team here in the UK, and we focus mainly on the networking between the client and the server. So it's kind of up to us to make sure that all the entity types are correctly networked and everything's functioning the way we'd like it to in the multiplayer game. But with 60 programmers or thereabouts writing new code and making new entity types, if we've only got 3 actually making it work in multiplayer, my team needs to work about 20 times faster than anybody else. You know, we're good, we're not that good, so clearly leaving all the networking to the network programmers
Get it done,
is not
Clive.
going to work. So what we need to do is have every engineer make sure that their own code works in multiplayer. But the problem with that is that network programming is really very hard, and it can take years to learn all the different ins and outs. So we need a way to simplify it so that, you know, non-specialists can learn everything they need to do in just like a couple of hours. What we need is an API, which stands for an Application Programmer Interface, and that's really a cushion between a programmer doing the work and the problem that they want to solve. The API kind of simplifies things by allowing the programmer to say exactly what it is that they want to do, but without saying how it should be done. So you can kind of think of it like driving a car. So obviously you've got your steering wheel and the pedals and, you know, other controls, gear stick, whatever. That's not how the car drives. They are just the controls that tell the car what to do. So under the hood, the driver's commands are turned into, you know, different settings for like fuel air mixture or engine timing or hydraulic pressures for brakes and power steering. And that's kind of the interface part of an application programmer.
Hey, Daniel. Thank you for the $5 super chat. You're probably playing the game wrong. You've probably got double the death count, only been playing a few months. I've learned how to get around a lot of glitches, even though I still crash a lot. But there is an art to not dying as much. I will say that my count is probably somewhere around 20 times the number on the screen because I've been playing for a few years. Like, I died a lot in the first few years of myself playing. Griefers are going to be a problem in Star Citizen, but right now, honestly, the law system is terrible, absolutely horrible, and with all the different exploits and weird ways you can get around things in the game right now, I don't think there's much way to catch people. I think it will always be a problem, but it's definitely going to get better as the law system improves. You've been killed by more elevators than NPCs. Plot twist, the NPCs are elevators.
Programmers often look at it. You'd see that everything is essentially lots of tables of values. Every entity in the game has its own table, and each value corresponds to a different property of the entity. Because we need to know what each value's for, we've got to give them all names. So a table has two columns, names on the left-hand side and values on the right. A row in a table is what we call a variable, and that's mainly because its value can change over time. A ship might have variables for shield strength and how much fuel it's got left. Players can
look at all these fancy graphics.
They're running or walking. And most, but not all of these variables will have an entity called a position, and that's going to tell us exactly where they are in the game's universe. And even though we kind of need 3 values for coordinates in 3D space, we tend to think of position as a single variable because one part changes, the other parts tend to change. So when an entity moves, it does so because the position variable has been changed. That variable is not really just keeping track of where the entity is, it's actually saying where the entity is. Programmers can write code that looks at the values in a table that belongs to an entity, and we can use those values to calculate some changes to other variables, and some of those variables might be in the same table or some might be in other tables belonging to different entities. So as the game progresses, these variables are modified according to, you know, the actions of players and AI, and these changes update the graphics that you see on screen, and they can trigger particle effects and sound effects. To make this work in multiplayer, we've got to take one machine, the server, and have that make the changes to the tables, and then the server then needs to copy the modified tables to all the other machines, all the clients, and it does this by sending messages over the network.
This is before they were even talking about replication layers and server meshing and stuff. I can't even imagine how much more complicated this is when you're not talking about a single server and a bunch of clients, but like a bunch of servers and a bunch of clients and an entity graph and a replication layer and just all these things.
A bit like a group text message. And if
so what we're watching right now is a explanation of serialized variables. Now, if you look at the road to server meshing as provided by Unobtainium, this is an official guide, but it does give some insight into the different things that are needed. Serialized variables is one of the primary things that was done back in the day, like 2017 time. So launched with 3.0. As you can see, this video came out about 5-6 months before that. And we're just kind of touching on the different things that is leading, excuse me, puberty, leading to the 4.0 update next year.
Everything works correctly. The clients and the server all have the same data in the tables, and everyone's in sync. Now, entities in our game can have dozens or even hundreds of these variables or properties, and most of them need to be kept in sync over the network. There are a few ways we could do this, and probably the most straightforward way is every now and then just to send the state of all the tables. And that works really well for very small numbers of entities. But as the number of entities increases, then the bandwidth that you're using to do that increases. And if we're not careful, that can cause us other problems. We might notice that most entities in the game don't tend to do much until someone does something to them. So what we can try is not sending the table for an entity unless it has changed. But now the game code's got to keep track of which entities have changed and which haven't, and that can be tricky to get right. It's a manual process that the gameplay programs have to do. Getting it wrong means that in certain situations, the tables for particular entities will no longer be in sync. We call that a desync, and the effects of that can range from like minor bugs that are just little annoyances to completely breaking the game.
Oh,
the
we
only
know.
way to find these bugs
We know
is
well.
lots and lots of time-consuming playtesting. Perhaps worse, we haven't really solved the bandwidth problem either. By adding more players, that means that more entities will be being interacted with and having things done to them. So more tables are going to be getting updated and more messages need to be sent out over the network, and the bandwidth jumps up once again. We still need to reduce this. So we might notice that when an entity's table is modified, not all the values in it are changed. So instead of sending the whole table, we could try just sending a few of them at a time, so we can split the table into sections. And then we're saving bandwidth by only sending a section if one or more of the variables in it have changed. If we put variables that are likely to change together in the same section, then we can save even more. But now the game code's got to keep track of...
I bet you could use like machine learning for that, right? Buzzwords, I know, but I'm just thinking from the way that people talk about using machine learning in their own everyday activities, I feel like you could eventually get enough data on which, like, that might be what he's talking about. You get data on which variables change at the same time often, and they start getting packaged up together more in this code database. This is cool.
Modifications to entities, but modifications to individual sections. And that's even harder to get right. We've also got to write some extra code to say which variables need to be put into which messages. And since different types of entities...
Gabriel, your friends, if they just got the game, they can get a refund if they would like. I would say that the game isn't ruined because of a single weekend. I mean, it sucks, it does, but the best thing to do is just to put the game down. I personally don't tell my friends to play because you end up having problems like that. I would tell them either, though, to, like, if they don't want to feel, you know, resentment because of that situation, you can ask for a refund on the website. I think you have 30 days. And it's always worth just putting it down and coming back to it when it's more complete. I promise it's not a waste just because of that one dick.
These have
yeah, most players are
variables.
nice.
They also need different sections. So this extra work has to be duplicated for every different type of entity. So the thing that really kills this plan for Star Citizen is entity components. A component is really, it's just a piece of code and some variables that implement a very specific piece of functionality. So entities get built by plugging different components together, and by choosing different components that you want to plug together, that gives us a different...
I keep in mind, guys, this was 5 years ago, so they have had a lot of time to develop this system.
Types of entities. If you need an entity that can move around and collide with other things, then you have to give it a physics component. Your entity needs shields, give it a shield component. The number of different entity types we can build this way grows exponentially with the number of different components that we have, but what also grows exponentially is the amount of networking work we've got to do to cover all these different entity types. So clearly this isn't really going to work for us. Our networking API needs to be smarter. What we wanted were controls that were as simple as those for a driverless car, and what we had felt like it was as...
Remember, Serial Variables came up with CIG funding and open source network protocol. Huh. I see. Well, yeah, I'm guessing that when he talks about being able to group up things that would change regularly with each other, I can't imagine they would do it. I hope they wouldn't do it manually, right? Because they're adding new variables to this game every single quarter. That would be miserable if they had somebody going in and looking at that stuff themselves. Is this guy still work for them, Clive? Yeah. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Clive definitely still works there.
It's marking variables dirty so we can see if anyone's hitting anything particularly quickly, and maybe there's a bug in the game code that needs looking at. Really,
yeah, Clive is still running the network team.
That we're going to get
Thank you,
from
Jim.
now on are by optimizing like streams of network messages, cutting out who's sending messages at all and how often messages are being sent. We can handle all that on the network side, on the netcode side. So it's kind of like I was saying before, where we've got this interface with the API that separates game code from what we need to do, and we can make our changes without affecting that. While we were working on this new technology, we noticed that one of the entity types started sending about 80% less data. At first, we just didn't believe that. We were certain that the numbers have got to be wrong, or that a bug's throwing away most of the data. It wasn't until we went back and we double-checked everything that really we started to realise that this saving's actually real and that it's due to the new code. That's probably not going to be typical, but it still kind of shows that the difference this kind of approach can make. That's not entirely where the story ends, though, because one of the other cool things about serialized variables is that they don't just work for multiplayer and networking. Instead of sending the different tables and values and variables between just server and clients, we can also store them in a database or save them to a file. And that means that for no extra effort at all, the gameplay programmers can use the same serialized variables for persistence, recording what the state of entities is in our persistent universe, and we can even use them for save games.
I would totally troll the video if I was this guy. Well, I think it might be kind of blocked by the chat. There's like this guy walking back here, coming towards the camera. He's walking, passes across the back. I don't know. I'd throw something up.
Personally, I think probably the best thing about serialized variables is that they're one of the cornerstones that we're using to build this big, seamless, persistent universe. Achieving that is going to require spreading the load over multiple servers. Because it's seamless, we're going to have these servers communicate with each other, and that's going to mean that there could be a lot of servers aware of
how you doing?
Any particular entity. So let's say, for example, an AI pirate. Now, we don't want all the servers trying to tell the pirate what he should be doing, because first, that would be just a complete waste of computing power. And the second reason is that the servers might not agree on what the AI should do next. So we need one server that's in charge of the AI pirate, and only that server can send updates for that AI pirate entity, and the other servers just listen to it. So the trick is going to be how we decide.
Ruby, gonna listen to the new podcast episode, but saw that we were live. Thanks for jumping in live, buddy, and thanks for renewing that sub with your Amazon Prime. Appreciate the support. 4 months on. Hope you're having a good time. The Twitch stream is a little unstable right now. If you want, YouTube will point you towards the YouTube stream, which is running a little better.
Which server gets the final say? And we're going to do that with something that we're calling tokens. A token can only be held by one computer at a time. And when a computer's finished with the token, it just passes it on to the next one that wants it. So by linking serialized variables and tokens together, we'll be able to transfer authority from one server to another as quickly as flicking a switch. What that means for
that right there, I feel like that is, if you're looking at server meshing as a whole and you wanted to ask what do serialized variables do for server meshing, I think that might have been what he just said. They make it, oh, that's loud. They make it possible to send those objects that those variables correspond to between different servers with a lot less load, a lot less computing power, a lot less data needing to be transferred between servers and clients. That's at least kind of the gist I'm getting of it. Anyone have the link to the title of this video? I can drop that in chat for you, actually. In fact, I'll just drop the whole playlist in chat for you. I'm not done with it yet. But I'm going to be working on it slowly and adding new videos to it. I'll probably put it in order, but I'll drop that into the chat. It's on YouTube chat for you. And that will give you the first bits of video that I've put into this playlist so far. So that's serialized variables. And with that, we got object containers, which were a big deal. And object containers are like really anything that makes up a space. So like you can see here, they might represent atomic objects. They may represent entire or partial level. This is done so that objects can reference other objects because they can be nested. So you can have a planet with a city inside that planet, those being different objects. Whoops. You can have a ship in that planet that's also its own object container. And then you can have somebody with armor on, and that armor is also its own object container. So The idea of object containers is that they are spaces that hold things in the game space, and that becomes really important as we move on to the next big topic. So this is just a lot of detail going over this stuff. Like I said, if you want the meshing, exclamation point meshing, the command should give you the link to access this, and you might want to look through all of it on your own at some point. I think I just opened Premiere Pro. Dang it. Turn down the music. Oh. Thank you for the reminder. I turned it up for the video. YouTube side seems to be working. Twitch would play a few seconds to go back to buffering. Yeah, Twitch is messed up. Okay, so the next one is object container streaming. This was like going from Star Citizen is nothing. Like you can't do anything in Star Citizen to an actual playable, we'll call it a tech demo still because it was super basic. But anybody who was around in 2018 remembers going from like an average of 15 frames per second for the whole community. I kid you not, it was that bad regularly, to like 25-ish frames per second, maybe average 20, 25. And for the most part, it stayed like that up until now, up until 3.17. It was like slowly creeping up for a lot of people, but for the most part, it stayed between like 20 and 30 frames per second on average for everybody after this edition, object container streaming. So let's dive into that stuff. I will click on the things that I recognize from this list. First was the entity component update scheduler. That I'm gonna assume, let's see, update all entity components on each game tick in the game loop on the server. So this is about keeping things refreshed and updated. It doesn't look like we had any around the verse episodes on it. Provide information of the distance and visibility of each entity in regards to each player. Limit network updates to the clients based on those distance and visibility information. So a lot of networking work going on here. Entity component updater is one of those things. After that was the entity ownership and hierarchy aggregates. And it looks like required to keep track when those dynamic groups are formed or disbanded. So this helps create the relationships between different entities, it sounds like. Load and unload groups of entities in the correct order. Okay. So this is what's breaking whenever I see the inside of my ship spawn before the outside of my ship. Cool. Good to know. Good to know that that's there. Entity snapshots, serialized variable culling. Building off of that original serialized variable addition, saying it only sends updates of the entities which are in near proximity of the player to that specific client. Pretty important. Big part of object container streaming. And then there's network and entity bind culling, which is kind of like the same thing. We've seen that a lot in other games and different things. This is basically just removing entities as they don't matter to the player, or in this case, to the client that the player is on. Overall, this all added up to object container streaming, which was meant to reduce the memory requirements on the player client because we weren't loading all of the stuff in the distance into our client anymore. This was meant to allow for that stuff no longer to have to happen every single time something happened in the game. This reduced the load on the CPU, which was also a big one. We all know the CPU is still the bottleneck for most of us. It was even more so back then. And it allowed for more objects and entities to be added into the level on the server. This was when we started getting planets. Once they got object container streaming on the client side, we got Hurston and the moons, and it all kind of started from there. This was a really big step. This was actually, I think, still the most significant step forward we took after 3.0. I don't think we've taken another patch that impacted the game quite like this did. Really hope that 4.0 does that for us. This goes through telling you, here's how client object container streaming works. CIG has also created many of their own animations. Not many, but they have created a animation also detailing this stuff, which you can find on their YouTube channel. But I also have a little video description here. No, this won't tell us. Here we go. This will show us. So this is how object container streaming was built with the client side in mind. Still waiting for it to... There we go. Okay, so this is a player, right, in the green over here. And as they move around this planet, the object container streaming makes sure all this stuff on the left isn't actually loading for this client. It's just the stuff that's near them. Nope, go back. And they show that here in the bottom right hand corner. I hope you can see that past my camera. Nothing else loads in because the ship is over there. But as they move into the other planetary segment, it loads out the stuff that's not in that client's object container, we'll call it, and it starts to load in the new stuff that is. So this is how it worked after they added that client-side object container streaming. Before that, it kind of loaded in everything, as far as I'm aware, and was a pain. And that's kind of what's being shown here in this diagram, I think. So after that, we got to move on to server-side object container streaming. Now, I didn't really know too much about server-side. It didn't make... There's a tomato in the way. It didn't make the same splash that client-side did, I think, because it didn't have as big an immediate impact. But from what I'm seeing here, it did bring along with it long-term persistence. And this was huge. This was one of the major boosts that started to bring new players in. It corresponded with the beginning of COVID-19. I think it was... No. This was a year before COVID-19 started. But it definitely was one of the things that started to really bring people back into the game. A lot of people did not care to play this game and get their progress wiped every 3 months. The way it used to be, this game would wipe out everything that you did every 3 months. And it was basically just, hey, come try this demo out for a quarter. But after this long-term persistence update came out, it all changed. People suddenly realized this was a game that they could play, they could progress in, they could actually do things with, and start to make some real money. 2019. Right, 315. Was it really 315? I guess yeah, so it was, wait. What? Oh, never mind. It was 3.8. Okay. I was like, there's no way it was 315. and actually what I was reading there about 315 is actually pretty important. As of 315, long-term persistence is broken up into 3 distinct parts: items, wallet, and reputation. Going forward, we will be able to wipe specific parts of long-term persistence individually as needed. For example, wiping reputation while leaving wallet and items intact. This level of flexibility will allow us to do necessary wipes while minimizing the impact on the community. So this is something people are very scared about, losing your ships when they do a wipe. They don't do wipes that often. Very, very gross. I know, no wipes, no bidet. They're not doing it right. But they have the ability to wipe our reputation or even wipe our money without getting rid of our ships. So even if you expect a wipe to be coming at some point in the near future, wait and see what specifically they're going to do, because they might actually spare us some pain. LTP was beginning of COVID? Yeah. So it coincided with COVID, which was also a big reason for a lot of people to start playing, but I think it was a big reason on its own too. Yeah, it's when you started playing because of lockdowns. I think that was the case for a lot of people. Entity Streaming Manager and Star Hash were also worked on here. I don't actually know what Star Hash is, but I hear it a lot. And there goes one of my lights. Make changes. I've been saved. Mrs. Tomato's laptop charger will save the lighting. Alrighty. So the Entity Streaming Manager and StarHash would make changes to the current in-memory database on the server to have it more in line with the requirements of persisting items in the game world. Okay. Doubt they'll stare us pain, but we can suck on that hopium. I mean, didn't they already do a wipe and not take out all that stuff? Be kind of pointless if they did all that work and then didn't use it. Make the geohash in 3D instead of 2D and use 64-bit floating points for the coordinates. What exactly is StarHash here? There needs to be a fast way to query the database for objects in a certain area in the game world so that objects can be loaded around a player who is moving through it. So StarHash is a database used in the Entity Streaming Manager. Okay. And the Entity Streaming Manager is just deciding which entities are streamed? Sounds like that skunk weed my neighbor keeps trying to sell me. Have you tried it? They're trying to sell it to you. I mean, you at least know if it's good. StarHash is a way of knowing what entity is inside another. It was intended to be a performant, but it isn't. Hash browns in space. Woo. Oh, space browns. Space hash? Guess StarHash makes sense. Oh, sorry. It's just remembering a good breakfast. All right. Persistent item database and Pcache. The Pcache was annoying to me because I only started hearing about the Pcache after we started hearing about the iCache. I was like, wait a second. And I know that the iCache was the follow-up of the Pcache, but what happened was we heard about the Pcache, and then we heard about the iCache, and then, well, like I said, started hearing about them at the same time, but then they started talking about a super Pcache, and I'm like, wait a second. It's a super Pcache, iCache. I'm guessing the super Pcache is what they were calling the entity graph before it was called entity graph. He won't lie, you buy it every time. Hey, Zara, there you go. Basically, SQL would be like an Excel, and you would place an entity in each line. Right. What's up, Sketch? How you doing? They got Space Hash. Is that a new truck? I mean, it can be. Sound like community made. They gave us the seal and everything, right? In the fan kit, we just every package of Space Hash, you just put one of those Star Citizen community made stickers on it to let the world know. Star Citizen is running a cartel. Quote it, clip it, pin it up on Anger Reddit. Oh gosh, people are so angry about this game. Good evening, Curtis. How you doing? Good to see you, Curtis Crouch. Cool name. StarHash would be joining those IDs so you can say, okay, all these entities are inside this other one, which in turn is in this other one. Yay, it's like the dolls. So at the end of all of this, all these things that we just touched on, server-side object container streaming was brought into the game. It reduced the memory requirements on the server, reduced the load on the CPU server, and helped. And it is meant to be something that we probably wouldn't really ever notice, but it's helping on the server side, especially with server meshing coming up. Not sure if any of the video clips I have actually detail how it works. Because it's basically the same idea as client-side object container streaming, but it's done with the server instead of the client. But yeah, server-side object container streaming was like the second coming, except not really, because it didn't actually make that big a difference to us. But yeah, that's when that happened, and from there we moved to persistent entity streaming, which was the next big initiative, it seems. Starting out with the global database, which feels like it's the entity graph. Okay, so the global database used the long-term persistence we saw, which came in 3.8. So that's kind of just referring to that work. After that, though, the entity graph started to be worked on. Yeah, Aksham Lar Morgarth. Have a good one. Or unless you're just getting here. Welcome. Hoş geldiniz. iCache took you 10 seconds to stow a gem from the ground into your inventory before you could pick it up and pick up a new one. Oh, gosh. Trying to stow hand minables. I want to say back in the day, but that was like a year ago. That was terrible. Graph databases are well established, different from relational databases. And this would be considered a relational database. Okay, so for the entity graph, basically the brain. It's like the long-term memory, long-term storage of everything that's going on. And we've got a little diagram for that, actually. Do we? Pretty sure we do. Yeah. So the idea behind the entity graph is that no, this isn't the one. Nope, this isn't the one either. Huh. I thought, is it? No. That's weird. I thought I had the one on here that showed the actual entity graph. Either way, the entity graph is your overarching sort of like one true timeline when it comes to this whole thing. So if you look here, this is sort of the structure of how the game is going to work to keep things running and make sure that those things that are running don't stop running just because a hitch happens at one point in the process. So on the right side, you have your server nodes running the simulation. At the bottom here, you have your clients. That's us running the actual game. In the middle is the replication layer, connective tissue. And then at the top here is your entity graph, which is kind of like your record keeper of everything going on. So as you play the game, you're sending data up to the replication layer, which is funneling that data to both the entity graph and the simulation, right? Because like you need to run the simulation for the game to work. Since the servers are running the simulation, but we're still communicating with the entity graph, if the servers go down, like a 30K, nothing actually happens to our stuff. The servers can boot back up and be right back up where they left off. And that's kind of the big deal with the replication layer and the persistent entity streaming that they talked about recently. But in the end of all this, the entity graph is kind of like what needs to be always true in order to keep running. And I don't know what kind of fail-safes that has or how that works. I'm not a doctor. But the work was being done in line for persistent entity streaming as early as 2020, it says here. Turkey turned my stream into a slideshow. Is YouTube not running anymore? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty laggy. Am I smooth for anybody? It's a slideshow. It's running just at 2 FPS. No, but this is so good. Oh, I should have recorded this too so I could just upload it as a video for all of you. Looks like the Twitch stream does now. This hurts, guys. It's painful watching the stream like just not work. The definition of smooth. I don't know, this is a little bumpy. Is that the opposite of smooth? Chunky? I can't say chunky, that's just a gross word. It's a chunky stream. Can you at least hear me? I need to OCS my YouTube stream, right? Somebody come persistent entity stream my stream. That doesn't make sense. Persistent entity stream me. Probably check my bit rates. It's telling me that my bit rate is actually it should say something here. Yeah, no, if it's saying excellent connection for myself. Oh! Not receiving enough video. Okay. Okay, Google. I see you. Always telling me that you get too much. Oh, yeah, look at that. Drop in frames by OBS. Well, that doesn't usually happen unless we're overloading the CPU. Interesting. Let's bump it up to 5,000 kilobits and see what it decides to do to us. Oh, we're tanking. Oh, yeah, we tanked. Okay, so clearly 5,000 bits can't work. What I'm gonna do here is, everybody on Twitch, I implore you to flee to YouTube quickly. We're gonna close things down and head over there because it needs to happen. We gotta I gotta take the Twitch stream off. I don't think that's helping us. Yeah, CPU's doing okay because I'm not running Star Citizen. This is I think this is an internet thing. So let's go ahead and anybody who wants to stay on Twitch, feel free. I have no problem with that. But I'm gonna send you on a raid over to Galather. Make sure to bring your smiles, hopes, and wishes and tomatoes with you over to that chat. Galather is a lovely fella. Does a lot of Star Citizen streaming. Check him out. Say hi. I appreciate you all being here. I'm sorry, Twitch, that it's so difficult. And we'll be moving into the new home tomorrow. So hopefully the stream will be better on Wednesday. Thank you all, and I'll catch you later. YouTube, though. Hold on, let's turn off the Twitch stream. Let's leave all them behind. We don't need you no more, Twitch. Get out of here. All right, YouTube. Tell me you're working better now. There we go. There we go. Look at that. Look at this in the bottom corner. You see that green square? You can't see it. Look, green on this. It's black on the screen because it's getting chroma keyed out. As long as this is black on stream, then we should be good. And as soon as I turn off Twitch, it is. Although now the stream is going down. We'll remedy that. Let's get back to it. Let me know if the stream starts hitching again or picking up or dropping off or anything like that. And I can actually turn off my restream chat and just look at YouTube. Sweet. Okay. Hey, Gabriel. Thank you for being here. I'm not going anywhere yet. We're just ditching Twitch. Let's talk more about the goods that are persistent entity streaming. So the entity graph, that was a big thing. We didn't, for some reason, hear about it until CitizenCon last year, but ended up taking over from iCache. And I guess what they're trying to say here is that iCache was being worked on in 2020, and then entity graph took over. But after that, we got global persistence in Alpha 3. Alpha 3.15. And many of you remember what that brought with it. Inventory system. It let the game servers utilize the entity and inventory data stored in the entity graph and global database. With state of entities being persistent long-term, more gameplay that utilizes the functionality of items existing in the game world long-term in the game world. What? Wait. With the state of entities being persistent long-term, more gameplay that utilizes the functionality of items existing in the game world long-term. We're just going to leave out that part. Will be implemented and introduced into the game. This is true. People keep asking why some stuff took so long. this global persistence, like these things that we're looking at, people are, oh, like this is what people need to send. I get comments like this on my YouTube videos all the time, and I'm sure you guys hear and see this all the time. Constantly, people will come in and be like, why are they adding new features? Why are they adding in new ships? Why don't they just work on the game and make it more stable and like make it so that the game runs? They're doing that. That's what we're talking about here. When they ask, why can't we see salvage gameplay? Most likely because global persistence wouldn't allow the damage map to actually persist, or for the materials to persist, or something like that. And I don't know the answers. I don't know if these are the answers, but when you read the explanations of these things, you can start to draw the lines to other things that are like, oh, now development's starting on that. Crazy how it's right after these things finish. Maybe they were connected. What's the link to the Spectrum post? I could drop that for you. I don't know why it's not. Here's the website itself. I don't know why the bot's not working. Very strange. And we're also still dropping frames. I wonder if there's something else on the internet. Is there any chance something else is streaming? That wouldn't make sense. That'd be download speed. Am I doing all right now? It got better. Okay. As long as it got better. Gonna try and get back to it. Where were we? Local, external, and personal inventories. This is what came with the entity graph that we were looking at, and the way that they were building that out with the global persistence. And we can actually, why don't we go ahead and check out some of the stuff they were saying. This is something that we can add to the playlist, Calling All Devs inventory system. Calling All Devs. Ba, ba, ba. What was it called? Inventory system? Star Citizen? Star Citizen. That's a fun typo. All right. So what were the questions on this one? No, nobody timestamped the questions. We don't need your face. You can just take a snapshot and it'll be enough eye candy. Thank you, Sketch.
But obviously, Star System's a big game, right? There's ships.
All right, do they tell us what the questions are? They used to put the questions on stream. It would help a lot. Let's see what he's talking about, though.
Subset of items such as commodities, so FPS minables, and the food and drink items. So, for example, water, Whammer's bars kind of thing, and all of that kind of thing. So anything that you can interact with in the world that is food and drink related or minables, you can then put them in your backpack and you're golden. But as soon as you get to something like a pistol or an ammo magazine or a flare, then you can't put that in your backpacks.
Right, mad scientist. That's why, like, I just want to try and make the most approachable content that explains this stuff, because like if you follow this stuff enough, I'm never going to say that it answers every question you might have, or it explains why the game's taken so long, or it explains why certain features come and others don't. I think there's valid reason to be annoyed about some of that stuff, and I think CIG does make mistakes when it comes to presenting some of that stuff. But if you get the context around what they're working on, it's so much easier to swallow all of this. And it's just way easier to like sit back and consider the changes that they're making when they make them, and when things might actually come into the game. The monthly reports show it. The progress tracker to some extent shows it. These sorts of Calling All Devs asking questions show it. Just getting that bigger picture shows it. So as many times and as much as I can make this stuff a little easier to understand through videos, live streams, podcasts, blog posts, infographics, whatever, that's the goal of Space Tomato Gaming. And we've almost got our home. So I'm so freaking pumped to see how productive we can get when we have a space for this now.
So that's a current limitation, and that's a limitation based on our current infrastructure of technology.
Yeah, items will be physicalized.
Saving of it, the persistent items to the back end. So in terms of what we're aiming towards next is we're aiming towards upgrading that system and making it more flexible so that, you know, I have found a combat knife, I have found a pistol, I want to take my helmet off and put it in my backpack. So you should be able to do that. The other inventory that we're talking about, we have, so that's what you classify as like personal inventory.
I don't know if he'll talk about physicalized here, but the inventory he's mentioning here isn't, I don't want to say it's a stopgap or a halfway point. I think it will persist in some way in the future. But if you look around your ships at the lockers and the benches, the tables, the shelves, even the fridge and the cupboards in your kitchens, those are meant to be your inventories at some point. You're meant to have physicalized items that you have to place and pick up. Gun racks, cargo boxes, all that kind of stuff. That's sort of the work that's starting with the cargo refactor that you're hearing about coming in 3.18 later this year.
Then we have what's classified as what I term as external inventory. Now, external inventory has a physical location in the world, like your backpack, or like the interaction point on the back of the Grin Rock, where you can go up to it, you can interact with it in the world like a physical light switch or something like that, and it triggers an interface. And that interface is the same interface that you use for your personal inventory. So you'll have the personal inventory on one side of the screen, and then you'll have the external inventory on the other side of the screen. And that external inventory could in the future be a crate, it could be anything, but you're not actually dealing with the individual items on a physical level. You're dealing with a storage container that has those items on the inside. And then when you have this interface, you can then drag and drop the items between them. So you can go, I'm going to put my bottle of water and my gun into that external storage space and store the thing. So that's what we classify as external inventory. Now, the next leap in terms of the next level of inventory.
So I think this is the physicalized thing is what he's about to talk about.
Is what we're classifying as the true physical inventory. So that is where you'd have a locker or a weapon rack, and you'd actually see the physical.
Swizzle, I'm glad that I've been able to help you get into the development. That's so exciting to me. Like, everybody loves to play the game, but I think it's really exciting when people start to get interested in the actual bones and development of the game. Because the more you know about that, the more fun the game ends up being, I think.
Items stored on that particular compartment. So if it was a locker, you'd open the locker and you'd actually see your undersuit or your clothes or your armor. And if it's a weapon, right, you'd see the weapon, and you're physically dealing with those items in the world. So unlike external storage, where you're not dealing with the physical items in the world, these are the things where you are dealing with the physical items in the world. Now, clearly, that's where we want to go in terms of that full physical inventory. But before we get there, what we want to try and do is, what's the next step? So, it's like, what's the next kind of like pit stop on the road to full physical inventory, where everything in the world is fully physicalized and local to that, to you. And that's the key word there. So the next step is what we call local inventory. So local inventory is a temporary solution on the personal level. So in terms of, I'm not talking ships.
I'm on the wrong
YouTube
channel.
Components. I'm talking like the actor and their armor and all of the items that they want to carry with them, and all of the food and drink items and grenades and so on and so forth. And local inventory is going to be a kind of temporary solution for that physicalized area for hubs and for hangars. So in full physical inventory, the idea is that you'll be in a landing zone and you'll have a habitat that, a room that you can go and store things in. You'll have a hangar because you get a hangar every time you buy a ship, and you'll be able to store things in there and have a big shipping container and put all your gear in it. And you'll have a ship and you'll put all your stuff in your ship. But clearly you won't want to put every single thing that you own in the ship, because if you're out in Pyro or you're out in deep space and that ship blows up, then you've lost all your gear. You've lost all the stuff. Now, your ship might be insured and the components on the ship might be insured, but the items, the small items inside there won't
soap
be
opera
insured.
of gaming.
And that's something that we'll need to, you won't want to carry everything with you all the time. You're not like a moving pack rat. So that's why you'll want these areas where you want to store things and keep them safe.
I get what you mean, Swizzle.
So that might be in the future, might be a homestead. So you have a homestead, this is your headquarters, or it's a hangar, or it's a hab, and this is where you're storing your physical goods, And those physical goods stay there
Thank you for that, Baguette.
and are safe and can't be destroyed or taken. Obviously in homesteads, you know, there's opportunity there for PvP raiding and all that, but I'm not going to go down that road. That's a fully different type of feature. But in terms of inventory, that's where we have this kind of local inventory. So what is local inventory? Local inventory is going to be a local inventory for the area that you're in, but it's not physically represented. Now, that doesn't mean it's infinite. It's still limited in terms of what you can put in it, but it'll be localized to, say, a landing zone or localized to a ship. So a large ship would be able to fit more things in than a small ship, and a landing zone would be able to fit in probably the most amount of things, because that's equivalent to like your hangar where you're storing all of your gear. So the next step that we want to go towards is kind of allowing personal inventory for you to be able to store items in, so that you can actually have that gameplay loop of, what am I going to take with me? I can actually open a bottle of water and drink it, and then, God forbid, the overview situation. The next.
Just see what else he talks about here, because inventory discussion is nice, but we want to learn mostly about the tech behind it.
The ship inventory to my personal inventory, or something.
Unfortunately, there's no timestamps on the questions.
Now, in a physical.
Like using too much internet. Come on, let me play. All right. Let's see if we can drop down to 480p. Okay, cool. So this video is done then. I guess I shouldn't have clicked anything. I should have just let it run. What's my internet speed? I get 70 down. Not sure what's going on with this.
Another wrinkle on top of that is that we'll have the character in the middle, and the character will be 3D, and it will be your character, and you'll be able to manipulate all these different inventories directly onto your character. And all of a sudden, now you're managing your loadout in this inventory system. So all of a sudden, we can then go, hey, PMA, you didn't really make sense, because that's not really how it would work. VMA, sure. Now, and we do want to kind of tweak VMA long term in terms of how that and deprecate it from something that makes more sense. But PMA never really makes sense. So that would go. Your access to like this infinite bag of holding would disappear, and all of a sudden you'd have the gameplay loop of what physical inventory will eventually be, or 90% of that gameplay loop, shall we say. Right. So you're having to manage the local, personal, and external inventories between all of your different ships and locations. And clearly this kind of system is what we want to put in place for then, that's a good step forward, which will be underpinned by, the technology of what we were talking about in terms of iCache, or a segment of iCache that will underpin this in terms of being able to store items and for those items to persist. But this will give us a really good leap towards like making the next step in terms of, okay, now we need to add physical hubs and physical hangars, because we need physical locations for you to store these things. We already have lockers, but
there's
we're always gonna
big little big little drop. That persistent hangars are probably coming. I would expect them this year, but they actually haven't been talking about them. We were expecting them in December. And I think something they were waiting for to work was persistent entity streaming and the cargo refactor, because those two things would depend on the hangars. The freight elevators entered the progress tracker. The shopping kiosks with loading timers are also on the progress tracker scheduled for this year. So I'm thinking maybe with the cargo refactor in 3.18 we might get persistent hangars, but they've said nothing. So we don't know. But persistent hangars and persistent habs are going to be big and cool, because once we have that, we basically have a home in the game. And I don't think anybody has felt like they've had a home just yet. It'd be very, very, very cool to know that you can return to a place and have it always be the same in this game, because nothing's ever the same.
Have external storage. So
I think it would be the 4.0.
We've talked about, where you've got personal, then you've got local, and you've got external. external and personal inventories are how we want it to be. We always want to have those. Now, we always want.
You don't think we'll get persistent hangers until 2 years from now?
You might have an overhead locker where you're just interacting with a space that's larger than you can actually physically see, and you can utilize the interface to manipulate that. But vice versa, you can go to a locker or a weapon rack and interact with those physically. But we're also going to offer you the ability to actually go, okay, I look at that helmet, I interact with it, it automatically takes it out, puts it on, and then I go, actually, I just want to put this whole suit on. So I'm just going to right click and go open external inventory interface, and it will bring up the external inventory. Now I can just drag them from that locker directly onto my character and then put them on. So we have
you think it'll come after server meshing,
but also a physical based system. And this is all underpinned by the physicality of all these items being in the world. You know, these external inventories, like we did with the Grinrock, they're not going to be magic bag of holdings. They are going to be physical to the volume that you can actually put in. Like, for example, your backpack. If I don't
know, it sounds here like he's talking about these bags of holding inventories kind of still being a thing in the future, rather than all physicalized. Let's see how he finishes off.
The underpinning of the persistent
no
technology. It's also about the content and the hangars and the physical hubs and all of those locations, and they need lockers and they need to work, and that's a huge amount of work from multiple different teams. But we want to get that gameplay loop live as soon as possible so that people can start experiencing the game that we're trying to make. So that's where we want to go forward next, and this is a good interim step. And then the next step would be, the moving forward of that in terms of the true physical inventory.
I love making videos with Richard Tyrer because I just sit back and I just
freaking Rich can just talk it up. I love that. Whenever we get a show with Rich Tyrer, actor feature shows are always interesting because he will let us know. He will let us know. Oh, sorry, that's probably pretty loud. My B. I got you guys. Okay. So that was just kind of talking about different inventories, personal, external, and local. Got to hear something that will change in the future as inventories become more physicalized, but we don't exactly know how. And as Jin said in the chat, what we're playing with right now doesn't rely on the entity graph so much as what will once we have persistent entity streaming, which is here. So that's interesting to know, because I did think that the entity graph was doing some stuff with the inventories. Okay, so after this, or rather during this, in parallel to this, however you want to go about it, was Stow and Unstow. This one is, I like this because it's so literal in how it's named. You just know what it's for. Physicalized items in inventory can be stowed and unstowed. Entities that physically exist in the game world have to be put into inventories and later taken out again. Both items and inventories need to be persisted. The physicalized items in physicalized inventories in the game world are now being persisted in the entity graph database. However, the non-physicalized items inside of inventories are not. They talked about this. I don't know if he loot something. I don't remember. I don't know if he linked that CC2. I don't think so. In this episode of Inside Star Citizen, I believe, look at how annoying it is when I don't have the stream deck to do all this stuff. So I believe they talk about this here when they talk about creating loot, and the idea that even though it's not physically present, it still needs to be physically ready.
Trying out, marking up a few different locations with some containers, mainly filled with weapons and armor.
Rich said that each ship you buy will get a hangar. Did I hear that right? What about packs with multiple ships? Yeah, that's how it is. If you go to your hangar in on the Star Citizen website and look at each ship that you've bought, usually they'll say that they came with a hangar. If you get a pack and it doesn't have a hangar for each ship, then that'll be the case. Look at the second from the bottom in the PES column.
So, say you're spawning containers on Hurston.
Entity graph item cache. Item graph item cache. Requirements for full persistence, physicalized items in inventory, and server meshing. So this isn't going to do anything until this won't actually matter, even for the persistence that they did, the global persistence. They didn't need that for it. Okay, where were we?
The main object container would be Hurston. And then
there we go. I think he's talking about it here.
And with some of the future stuff coming down the...
So this is a discussion about loot. Loot was one of the things that took a very early use of some of this back-end stuff that's being made and allowed for new items to be spawned in when they needed to be from inventories and stowed and unstowed like we've been talking about. So here's kind of what an early look at that was back in July of last year, about a year ago.
Heavy, which would give you all of the selection of the heavy armors under that. And then it could be gadget.medkit. So you would then have a loot archetype that says, give me any rifle or any heavy piece of armor or any medkit. It's been a lot of work to get it working that way, but all of it sort of works in conjunction with each other, and with some of the future stuff coming down the pipe as well, such as Quanta, the loot generation system actually will read from the parent object containers that we use in the game at the moment. So say you're spawning containers on Hurston. Your main object container would be Hurston. And then let's say you've got Lorville, which would be L19. And then inside that, you might have, let's say that we expand the city and there's like an abandoned hovel underneath that's maybe occupied.
Which does exist in lore. So I do hope they put that in the game.
By pirates. If Quanta decides, oh, okay, so authorities came, cleared that place out, that place is now no longer a pirate base, it's now storage site for Hurston Dynamics, then all of the containers in that area then might switch to be containing Hurston equipment. Quanta can then determine way up the chain, way at the top.
From what I can tell, given the game, the way the game awards me with loot right now, Hurston Security loves to store animal poop, frag pistols, Uberev pistols, and fruit in their containers. So, thanks for being healthy, Hurston.
This is how things are now happening because AI has moved in, things have happened, things have changed, and the archetypes and the loot generation system reacts on the fly to that. So if Quanta was to decide this planet has been raided, it's been full of conflict, there's been wars here, like people are leaving in droves because it's not safe to be here anymore, the status of that planet, the richness of that planet lowers as well, to the point where then the loot generation system says, okay, where most of these containers might have been 50 to 60% full as they were, now we're only going to fill them up to like 20 to 30%. It's all about adapting on the fly to where you're at, what you're doing, and seeing what can be.
So where we're at right now is we've got a pretty...
So really the main takeaway here is that because of these things that were happening in the background, somebody else might be able to clarify. I could be wrong about this, but I do believe that the work that they've been doing in the background with these things like physicalized items and inventory, local external personal inventory, stow and unstow, all these things have created the ability for the other new features to come in that we're starting to see. Things like loot or things like items selling to stores and other things like that. Being able to move components to other locations. These are all features that like people have been asking for, but they weren't being worked on because the supporting features weren't worked on yet. And that's true for a lot of things in Star Citizen that people are always asking for. One of the big ones, probably night vision. I'm sure there's something that needs to be finished, whether on the rendering side or on the ideas side, that they just haven't gotten to because it's not efficient to work on that right now. Another one that I think has had to struggle with this is the star map, which has been in existence since like 2016, 2015. We've been dealing with the same model basically. And I think a lot of the reason that hasn't been updated is because 3D building blocks needed a lot more to function than the 2D building blocks that's built the HUD and the Reputation app and stuff. I also think that there's a lot of data tracking and maybe some other features that needed to be built into the star map that they didn't really want to have to do and then redo for server meshing and all that kind of stuff. So might have been waiting on that end as well. But it's just, this is why I say, like, when you watch the development of the game, it's a lot easier to understand why some things happen the way they do. Yeah, derelict rare loot. Night vision is an argument between level design and UI. Looks versus function. And the engine team, it sounds like. Yeah, UI is a slow one. Slow moving. Okay, after Stow and Unstow, we have Replication Layer. This was the big addition to server meshing. A big difference between the server meshing we learned about last year and the server meshing that we had been hearing about years prior. The goal here, they didn't list the problem really, but the problem I believe that the replication layer solves is the detachment between the item and information storage and the simulation itself, allowing for things to persist even if the simulation ended, I think was the idea behind this. But the goal state: create a new service that is going to sit in between the player clients, game servers, and entity graph database, and is responsible for OCS loading decisions, state networking, caching, persisting, and initial game world seeding. So to give you some idea of what those things mean, what is with this thing starting songs and then like only playing them for a couple seconds? So initial world seeding would be this. Essentially, the game is made as a default. A server is spun up or a shard is spun up, whatever, I don't know, whatever it is. A version of the system is spun up, and they all get their little items, their locations, their outposts, their moons, their NPCs, their weapons, their loot boxes, their derelicts, their caves. Everything gets seeded and added into like a default version of the game. That's what they mean whenever they call item seeding from the universe root up top. And then also, as they said, it's that connective tissue, that link in between all the layers, and we can see it again like I showed here in the middle between the clients playing the game, the servers running the simulation, and the entity graph keeping all the information safe. The website that I'm going over is something, it's community made by Unobtainium. Posted it to Spectrum. I'll post it in chat right now. The unofficial road to server meshing. Continuing on. This server is meant to run alongside the game server to get all of this functionality online before moving it into its own server for server meshing itself, at which point it will be called the hybrid service. This decouples the persistent state of the game world from the simulation through caching and persistence, and allows for server crash recovery, which we've been hearing about with persistent entity streaming being tested in that recent letter from the chairman. The clients and game server will communicate via the replication layer, and instead of exchanging data directly, they will use that layer. This is exactly what we keep seeing in this demonstration. The client is corresponding with the server that is being played on, and even if the servers die, if we have a 30k or anything like that, the client's still on. We're still playing the game, or at the very least, we are still able to send all of our data into the replication layer and recover into the game like nothing ever happened. That's a big help, I think, from something like this. Stephen French, thank you for becoming a YouTube channel member, especially extra support. Means a lot to me. YouTube support goes a really long way. It's helped us get this house, get our living situation working out. It's our family's only income, so it means a lot. Thank you so much for the support. And make sure to check out those exclusive videos on the YouTube channel. I got a new one coming out next week. It's going to be a much more in-depth version of the video I'm making this week, which is about the quantum economy. But I've got a bunch on there already you can check out on the front page. Okay, so for static server meshing, the replication layer will be moved onto its own server, as we mentioned up here. Multiple game servers can connect to it. Other services will also be moved onto this central server, which is why this service is called the hybrid. So the first version of it won't be the last version, which is true with all of the stuff we're reading about now. Yeah, it's going to help a lot with server stability and stuff. Definitely. With server meshing having multiple game servers compute the same game world, those game servers will have to share and access the same data. This is for server migration and creation. This I don't know, but it's a requirement for persistent streaming and server meshing. It uses the single responsibility principle of only having the game servers compute the game world for the players, while executing separate logic and storing data on separate servers and services. Steven, I saw you deleted a message. Thank you, though, so much for becoming a member. So there's a lot of things going on here, and this is kind of, I think this is part of the, what did they say, 75% of the work or something that persistent entity streaming was for all of this. And I mean, look at all these different services that are being mentioned here. You got the Npc Character Creation service, which aids in the creation of AI at specific locations, in line with the quantum simulation, something you'll learn about on my video coming out later this week. Got the NPC Scheduler service, which is meant to add and remove NPCs to the game, dynamically spawning them in to become VNPCs and to be the people that you would encounter during missions or when you're visiting bars and stuff like that. Again, something I'll cover on the video this week. The AI Info service, continuously tracking the position of players, NPCs, and other entities. The NPC Tracker service, which tracks and records the actions of players and NPCs, such as with bounties. Identity service, which will be a proxy service that will relay info about accounts between the RSI service and Spectrum and the game client. The Reputation and Org service, introducing the first iteration of persistent reputation. Reward service, tracking stats and data per player. Configuration service, responsible for real-time distribution of services and clients. The Quantum Economy, the Subsumption service, the Services Distributed Load Testing System. There's so much stuff packaged up in persistent entity streaming and just this back-end and networking stuff. When you read about them, they all make sense. Like, you read their description, you're like, oh yeah, I guess there would need to be something that you need to make for that. But you don't actually ever think about it. Like, that there is a checklist of however many things that this team needs to get through in order to make sure that the one thing that could make the game work actually works. And a lot of it for them, as far as I'm aware, is kind of R&D. That's why we don't know how much server meshing is actually going to help the game. But this just goes to show how complicated this is. And to be quite honest, guys, I made a pyramid. Okay, in my intro to computer science class, I made a freaking pyramid with hash marks, and it took me like 2 hours. And as soon as I added one more thing in it, it wouldn't work. So this, I'm not even going to try to understand how difficult this might be, but I can imagine. I can imagine not wanting to be open to the, like, not wanting to see the player base while you're working on this. Could you imagine how angry people are about how long this game is taking, and how often people are like, CIG has no clue what they're doing. CIG is completely, they're scamming everybody. They're clueless. They don't know anything. They can't develop games, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, working on all of this in the meantime, I can understand why we don't really hear from them much. This is ridiculous sounding. Because they want it to scale to slowly to make sure everything works before assigning more than one server computing. Right. It's like a construction project where they're developing the plans as they build the building. That's, I heard, so I've been working on a script. But I'm so freaking hesitant to finish it. I've been working on a script for like a year. It's about how Star Citizen has taken so long, partially because they've been building the engine while building the game. And the analogy that I use is a lot like what you were saying. It's like construction if they were trying to, this is one I actually got from another video that was talking about building engines. It's like building the scaffolding for the building as the building is going up. It's like you have to figure out how to engineer the scaffolding to be the most efficient it can be, and still make it so that people can use that scaffolding as a staircase and as a functional part of the building, while also building the building from that scaffolding. It's crazy. Typical content. Yeah, comment shaft. It is, but like, it's draining. I mean, they said it so much themselves earlier this year. Like, they obviously weren't talking about most of the community, people like us who make normal complaints about the game taking a long time or being annoying, but they did say like there is a certain amount of noise that gets through to their developers that probably discourages them quite a bit. Not noise like criticism, but noise like insults and things that are phrased in a way that are meant to not necessarily guilt trip people, but make them feel like they're not doing a good enough job. You get that in work enough and you don't want to work anymore. So I kind of get that. That's also why you get mad when people are comparing single player games to SC. It makes no sense. Yeah, this is a crazy page to go over and then also try and compare Star Citizen to Starfield. They're space games, and they'll both be tons of fun to play as space games, but this is a different beast. I never even thought as a gamer I would be looking at a screen like this, to be honest. So, we finally get to the goal of this segment, persistent entity streaming. Now, the goals for this are to have a persistent world where everything is stored in databases and loaded in by the game servers when they need it, and accessed and computed by various services. Things like the NPC scheduler, the virtual economies, or the virtual AI system, stuff like that. It allows for all items to be placed anywhere in the game world and persistent over large amounts of time. It allows you to crash your ship on a planet and have the derelict ship that you owned stay there so your friend can come by and get all your loot. It allows for you to make a weapons stockpile in the middle of a microtech forest and leave a pile of guns there for somebody to come across a few months down the line, just as like a little... This literally is going to allow us to make a scavenger hunt, a reliable scavenger hunt for people. Oh, God, it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. I really do hope that this gets to a stable place this year. It only comes fully online when the hybrid/replication layer service goes live, but I don't know if that's coming with PES or not. I'm assuming it is, since they talk about PES being in 3.18. All of SCS field engineers, basically, made on the spot, talking to people, reading their posts. It's important to do that. Yeah, Seth, if you type... Actually, you know what? Don't have to type in anything. I'll drop the link for this website in chat for you right now. Should have gone through. Check out the site there. Most people can't put it together an IKEA table. Oh, hey, we put together like 6 different pieces of IKEA furniture over the last couple days. That's at least a qualification I know I meet. To be honest though, I like dread putting together furniture. So, persistent entity streaming introduces a highly scalable cloud-native service backend architecture for high data throughput, low latency, high responsiveness, fault tolerance, and crash recovery. In simple, it makes the game persist. It makes the game and the items in the game persist. This is such a huge step towards making this feel like a game that's not just some tech demo that you're stepping into for a two-hour play session. Like, this is literally get in your ship and live there for good. Put food into your ship, put weapons in your ship, put ammo in your ship, everything that you would need in your ship. Put it in there, take your ship out, and don't return to a space station for 2 weeks. Just keep running bunkers out of that spaceship. I feel like that's where this is taking us. And I couldn't be more excited for it. You meant people are nice when you talk to them. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, read people's posts. See what they have to say. And you'll know that, like, It's going to be okay. The problem is when people make posts that are very unfriendly, or even not even just posts. I don't think people realize how much other people see what they say. Like, I can confirm there are CIG devs in this chat right now who have been active in the chat, who are seeing what people are saying, and I'm sure that's true a lot of the time. And like, you want to go and enjoy the thing that you're helping make with the people who are playing it, but when those people are constantly saying things that kind of suck to hear, I can totally understand why it would start to be a little bit disconcerting, discouraging. Seth, thanks for becoming a supporter. Welcome to the garden, my friend. I hope you enjoy the exclusive videos and the fun emotes on chat. We're actually going to redo our emotes coming up soon, so keep an eye out for that. Some cute tomato faces. Now, persistent entity streaming is the big one for this year, and we're all very, very happy for it. But the real kicker, what we've really been waiting for, the pie in the sky, the goods, the little bit of poutine that, like, where the fries burn because they were touching the pot, and it's like crunchy, but you also got a decent amount of like cheese curds on there, and the spicing is just right, a little bit of salt. That right there, that's server meshing. Let's talk about it. Vagabond, hey, good to see you. Hey, Ashant, how you doing? Fabio, you're already on YouTube, buddy. Actually, I can take that down now. The YouTube thing was for anybody on Twitch because Twitch kind of sucks. What's up, Jaybird? Okay, time and synchronization. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know what it means. I don't know, like, this context. First tests of connecting two game servers together helped identify synchronization issues. I see. So this is something that they identified and came up with a fix for. Again, engineering on the spot, basically doing R&D as they go, fixing problems as they pop up. In fact, that's what this is right here. Entity graph iCache. It's literally called entity graph / iCache because iCache failed to do what they wanted and they had to change it to the entity graph. So they're like actively figuring out how to do what they need to do to make this game work. There's no working model for this. Server nodes. All right. This is actually important terminology. So a single game server can simulate the entire game world once more content and players are added. The solution is server nodes, because we need more than one single game server. So they need to become horizontally scalable services. Server nodes are still game servers as before. They are responsible for simulating the game world, verifying the actions of the players, and simulating AI. The difference now is that a specific server node might only compute specific entities or part of the game world and not the entire game world anymore. You know what that reminds me of is that serialized variables we went over? How they could say, okay, we're only going to pick the things that changed and send those through the pipeline. Everything else stays here. Or like server meshing works, or object container streaming. They only pick the things that matter and send to those. And it's the same kind of thing, it seems, with these server nodes. Now there's another terminology, called shards. And this is really important because as people start talking more about server meshing, you're going to hear talk about instances and servers and shards and their kind of particular things. So because players don't play on and send or receive data from a single game server anymore, a game world is not referred to as a game server anymore. It's now referred to as a shard. So server meshing isn't connecting the game servers that we're playing on. It's a little different. The goals of this is to create a distinct change the playing on a single server to playing on a server mesh. That server mesh makes up the shard. So you go, I guess the instance is kind of like the name for the shard, right? So instance and shard are interchangeable, but servers make up shards. Clients fill in servers. Each shard is an independent copy of the Star Citizen universe or game world. And this is the big question. Ever since we learned about shards and server meshing as an update last year, this is the big question everybody's been wondering. How many people can they put on a single shard? How much geographical space can a single shard cover based on where the virtual servers that they have running this are going? You know, Amazon's covering for the servers, but how many places in the world can they do that? And how many servers can they have in those locations? Can we have an entire North American shard? Can we have just a US West, US East, US Center, and Canada shard, Mexico shard, like European shard, or is it going to be England and Germany and France and them separately? Nobody really knows, and that's the big question. Shards are vertical instances because they're vertically scalable based on how much you can pump into them. You think there will be servers for Hearst and Microtech spaceports? So that's the interesting part of server meshing, is that the servers could be, at least dynamically speaking, as big as a planet or as small as a single building outpost on a moon, depending on how many people are there. The first major milestone is to scale server meshing up far enough to support one single shard per region. That'd be cool. The long-term goal is to offer a single worldwide shard. So that's the goal. But again, nobody knows. Not yet, at least. Well, maybe they do. They just don't want to tell us. Therefore, initially there will be a multiverse of SC universes, but economy is shared via quantum. We kind of already have that. While playing, players and entities can only ever be transferred between server nodes on the same shard, never to server nodes of a different shard. Players can still join and switch to another shard, but this can only happen from the main menu before they start playing. That is a big one. That means that if you have a friend who's playing in Europe and you're playing in America and you happen to go to the same place in Star Citizen, you won't be able to see each other unless you make sure to specify that you're playing on the same shard. So there will still be that same front end sort of, here is your server list, here is where you can play, these are the people you'll have access to, unless they can get a global shard working. But that's big. As opposed to a horizontal system like Neverwinter. I see. So shards are like vertically are vertical instances as opposed to horizontal. It can be scaled out. Also with static server meshing, do they have to choose between player count and server performance? And if so, what do you prefer? Oh, server performance. For sure, by far. If the economy is linked through quantum and they're still able to load NPCs into the game to create a realistic population, I don't need to have 500 players around me. I'm free to wait until they can figure out how to do that. As long as the game is running and it's running well and everything is working and NPCs are in the game and they're all doing what they need to do, I think that is fantastic. And I'm willing to wait until like beta or whatever to see if they could do a global shard of some sort. So that's server nodes. What is Atlas? Atlas is one of the components of the initial hybrid system, which was the replication layer? Yeah. Okay. So Atlas is meant to create a service that manages the entity authority for the server nodes of a shard. Sounds like fun. Sorry, honestly, this is starting to melt my brain. So I'm gonna skip a little bit up to shard manager, because I can at least recognize those words. A shard does not consist of a single game server anymore, but multiple servers and services. We know that. Because we have these shards taking up areas of the world, there needs to be something that manages them for how they work. That makes complete sense. So that's another service they need. Hybrid service. The rename of the replication layer, we know about that. Fleet manager is... For server meshing to come online, there needs to be a manager for all servers and services of a shard. This is going to be the job of the fleet manager. It is going to start and stop services and servers statically initially, later dynamically under dynamic server meshing. It's already developed with that dynamic functionality in mind. So this is the service that will be spinning up different servers as needed for a space, for the Stanton system or the Pyro system. Player item shard transitions. This is a service that moves players, their items, and ships between shards between play sessions without major immersion breaks when it comes to persistence. So figuring out a way to get you from that US region shard into the European region shard with all of your things and all of your stuff without messing up. This is actually really interesting because I think this is going to be complicated when it comes to things like bases, outposts, things that you've built in your own shard. You have a permanent place of living in the shard. When you transition over to the other shard, what happens to that? Does it get moved over with you, or does it stay in your home shard? If it gets moved over with you, what if there's stuff already there in that other shard? So yeah, this service, I'm sure, is a lot of challenge to make as well. But this all eventually leads to static server meshing, which has been in the works for a while, and we're hoping is tested by the end of this year. This server mesh is meant to use distributed computation to have multiple game servers compute the same game world by sharing the computational load. Yeah, so this is it. Like, this is the connective tissue of it all. I know I was using that term for the replication layer, but this is literally the game. Like, server meshing is what creates the game. It allows for multiple servers to band together into a band of brothers, a team. Join me, my f***ing brothers, and you know, and sisters. And you control the game and make it run without having to overload a single server with all that work, which is why we get a lot of the problems that we do with the current game. A lot of people keep asking when is performance going to get better. I'm not saying it's going to be when static server meshing gets here, but static server meshing is a part of that equation. Dynamic server meshing, this is the future. This is all planned and status unknown as seen here. Let's see what they've got for us. Requirement for everything. Right, where was it? Hold on. What does that say on there? No, it doesn't say requirement for. But yeah, basically requirement for everything. This is where the game hinges. Okay. So ship interior object container streaming. We've heard about this a bit. Interior culling, I believe. When complete, streaming interior object containers in and out of ships based on distance will allow vehicles to have higher performance stage of streaming used for far distances. Yeah, so this was taken from the release view. We've heard about this, but it's been pushed back a few times. Seems it is definitely something. Maybe this wasn't the same thing, but it sounds like this is something that won't be coming for a while. The load balancer. For server meshing to become dynamic, there needs to be some kind of logic implemented that will automatically decide how the load entities are distributed across the game's servers. However, not a lot is known about this feature and in which form it will be implemented. Speculation says this might also be the functionality of the Atlas service, which will initially be part of the hybrid service, which might take over the role of not only keeping track of authority, but also deciding how it should be split. Unobtainium, hats off to you for how much detail you put into this. This is, if you're watching, this is amazing. Like, obviously it's unofficial, so you never really know what is and isn't exactly on the spot. But in terms of an average overview and getting all of this into one place to help people realize how much work goes into this, this is just phenomenal. I wish I could turn this into a video. I wouldn't even know where to start. Holy crap. System recovery and client reconnects. We've already got this. Entity Graph and the Replication Layer will allow for the recovery of crashed servers and reconnects of disconnected players. If this functionality will already come online with static or dynamic server meshing is not known at this point. Okay, maybe we don't have this. We have something kind of like it. We have a heartbeat for the server. Doesn't necessarily bring you back where you were, but it can bring you back with some of your stuff still saved. Here it is mentioned in the approach. Alpha 3.15 also came with crash recovery for ships by checking the entity graph, then stowing the ship into the global database. From there, it then can be spawned again or on another server by the player at a terminal with the interior fully available. This was a first workaround before the actual server crash recovery that will allow us to keep playing exactly where the game left off, which sometimes does work. Yeah, it's seriously something else. My hat's off to Unobtainium for this. This is probably the most impressive Star Citizen content I've seen. This is insane amount of compiling information here. With splitting the game world and its simulation with Entity Authority, the next step is to make this solution dynamic for better scalability. Yay! The solution is dynamic server meshing. I should have clapped then. It allows for unlimited player, theoretically, and entity count in a shard. Ideally allows for players to play in one single shard across the whole world. Ideally. The entity authority limitation for the game servers always responsible for a section of the game world, is lifted. Instead, game servers follow their authorized players freely while those travel through the game world, so these dynamic servers can move around to accommodate players as they move. They can now overlap, exchange client views with each other, and transfer authority anywhere in the game world. These dynamic servers are basically their own entities, running around the game world and doing their job. It's kind of crazy. You'd love to have a gamepad interaction akin to Cyberpunk. That's the plan. You can use a gamepad with the game. It's just not very good right now. It's having folks like you guys to decipher this information for mouth breathers like me. I am a fellow mouth breather. I just have spent enough time mouth breathing over this information to finally understand it a bit. Maybe cargo recovery uses an entity graph database, but it's not the entity graph. Huh. Okay. Put it into multiple videos so you can get detailed on different subjects. Yeah, but it's just like... I mean, to be quite honest, it's just very dry. It's got to be hard to make this super entertaining, which is probably why CIG just hasn't put it in the effort to do all of it. Put out some text explaining it. People who want to know will know. I don't know. I might take it on. We'll see. Maybe when server meshing finally comes out and we have more information on it. But this is an algorithmic approach which continuously monitors the computational load in the game world and decides for an optimal distribution of the computational resources, that is the servers being meshed, by moving entities and their authority from an overloaded game server to an underutilized game server. Let me show you a little bit of what this might look like. So, going back to the server meshing videos we had old server meshing here. Let's see if we can find new server meshing. I might not have saved that. I should have. Here we go. This is it. Okay, so this will show us. This is how the communication through the replication layer will work for server meshes. So what we have here is 3 representations of the same exact place. We have the replication layer, which is this big old piece in the middle here. This is where all the information is being tracked and kind of pipelined through to each other. We have, we'll say, server A in the top left-hand corner up here. Gosh, you can barely even... Hold on. Let me make this so that you guys can actually see this. That should be good. Okay. So you have... Does that work? So you have server A up here in the top left-hand corner. You have server B in the bottom left-hand corner here. and then you have the whole replication layer in the middle. So what happens is, and now I'll wait because I didn't actually plan this. Okay, there we go. So something happens in server A, which you can see is basically containing these two ships over here. When that happens, server A sends the information into the replication layer. That's tracked and stored. Something happens in server B. That's this area down here surrounding this Idris. When that happens, information is sent to the replication layer. Now, the replication layer is always keeping track of this by sending it to the entity graph, but it is also redistributing information to the other servers so that if somebody moves from one server to another, or rather when something moves from one server to another, the information can be transferred between the replication layer and the servers can be passed off based on whichever server is in the best place. So what you can see on the video here was that this Idris moved from server A into server B, basically across the server mesh, and that loaded in the new stuff into server A, and then it reflected the change, which is that ship arriving again on server B. This information is reflected into this information is sent to the replication layer from server B to let them know, hey, this ship arrived, and then the replication layer sends it to server A. Server A sends more information back to the replication layer, which then sends it back onto server B. Basically just this constant communication from all these different servers into the central point, the replication layer. And it allows people to move around and do stuff and yada, yada, yada. All that jazz. Pretty crazy stuff. This eventually will all lead to a single shard version, which is crazy. But they want to have everybody in the globe playing in the same place, and I don't know how that would work. Let's see, they aim to scale up the amount of servers per shard high enough so that all players can fit into a single shard. The first milestone will be 1 shard per region. The final goal is offering a worldwide shard. This will require further R&D in how to reduce the impact of high cross-region latency. That's a big one. For scenarios where areas have extremely high population, a layering technique might be introduced that puts interacting players into their own layer. Speculation saying there might be a time period where CIG will offer 1 shard per region as well as 1 worldwide shard. For the developers, this would provide a test bed for global shard tech, while offering the players a choice of between an experimental experience, PTU, in the global shard and a more stable one in regional ones. It will be crazy if this works. Truly monumental. It's so far away still. This is exciting stuff, but it's worth not even really thinking about at this stage, to be honest. But this is kind of showing the initial version of shards. Ooh, yummy dinner. Is that doner? That's a lot of doner. Oh, I'm all for it. All right, so we'll have multiple European shards, North American shards, Asian shards. This would be the first version. And then it would they would consolidate shards into larger and larger sections, more players per shard. Finally, 1 shard per region, hopefully. So this is over the course of probably several years. We're looking at this kind of thing being maybe next year. 2, 3 years down the line, possibly 4 years down the line. You know, set up your expectations to eventually 5 and maybe 6 years. It's a lot of time before this becomes a reality. It's a lot of time. So this concludes our journey to dynamic server meshing. Give us the outro, Unobtainium. Object containers split the entire level into individual reusable level building blocks, aka object containers. Client-side OCS, or as the acronym might state, COCS, allows clients to only load and network the nearby level area by being provided a partial view into the server's level. Server OCS, otherwise known as SOCS, allows the game server to only load level areas with players inside by being able to load and unload objects into a database. Essentially, the game server has a partial view into the entire level, which resides in the database. Static server meshing, which is the next step. That's in terms of how we've been progressing. Server OCS was 3 years ago now. So static server meshing is the next big step. That's 4.0. The next thing for us to actually look towards. This will split the level into a fixed number of sections and computes each one of them as its own game server. These servers will be meshed into a shard though. Players will be able to seamlessly transfer between these servers when traveling between these sections. So if you're traveling from Hurston to Crusader, from Grimhex to Microtech, from the Air and Halo Belt to a jump point, these will be different servers that you'll be flying between, but staying in that same game instance. Players can look into multiple servers and sections at the same time. You can see your friends from different servers while you're playing the game. After that, hopefully not too long after that, but could be a couple years, the dynamic server meshing will solve the problem of specific sections of the game world being fixed servers. So instead, you will be able to follow players wherever they go as a server, or rather servers will be able to follow players wherever they go. Game servers can be spun up and down. They can change size based on how many players are in an area. So if you've got a capital ship battle going on and you've got 3 ships with 50 people on them, that battle might need to be a server all on its own rather than being included in the planet server. Stuff like that. Might as well just look at the rest of the outro. If you made it this far, I hope that this presentation was able to provide a good overview and a new appreciation for these technologies. As we can see, a lot of work has already been completed and we are getting even closer to dynamic server meshing for Star Citizen being a reality. Even after the release of dynamic server meshing, all of these software systems we talked about will most likely be continuously maintained, iterated over, and optimized over many years to keep improving on the player experience and allow for larger shards. While this is the end of the major tech explanations, there's still much more information about each of the minor related technologies left to check out. So this is a huge presentation. Community members who helped out, good for all of ya. Thank you for helping out. And this is, where do we go? We're just going back through the whole thing now? Okay, so that's kind of the wrap up. Sources. Oh yes, here we go. This is what I was looking for. So I'm gonna save all of these into a playlist as well. This is just incredible. Look at the freaking compilation of sources that he's got. Oh my gosh. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Spectrum posts with links. I'm going to become a supporter of this channel. I'm going to bookmark this for sure. And I will be back to this a lot. This is a fantastic reference. Something to pull out, honestly, when they're having like a around the verse, Star Citizen Live, when they're asking questions. This is a great resource to have to pull questions from. Yeah, respect to the creator. If you see them around, whether on a post or in the comments section somewhere or anywhere, make sure to reach out to Unobtainium and say thank you so much for this. This is great work. Give him a coffee. Wow. So what do you guys think? What's everybody think of this? What are your thoughts? Tell me, was this are you gonna have to go over this again? That was like a wash of information. That was a lot. My brain hurts. He's a great guy, but just like we see that CIG didn't do this, if you're in the hat, CIG, ask yourself why you didn't do this, Mr. Developer, then go thank the guy. I would prefer if the Mr. Developer didn't do this, actually. You give him a Reddit award? Oh, did they post it to Reddit? Heck yeah. Give him the ups. Give them the ups. This is good stuff. I think this does a great job of realistically kind of showing how long this still could take. Granted, we don't have any context for, like, I don't know how long a scribe takes, right? But listening to the complexity of a lot of these things and looking at how many of them there are for each step, and then looking at how long these steps each took, I could see this single shard being 5-6 years out. He did like an update post. Yeah, the first one was cool. I don't remember it being interactive. This is really cool. Someone was saying CIG doesn't communicate enough, any other company, and this would be a leak. Yeah, you wouldn't get this stuff from other companies. And granted, not many other companies are funding the same way CIG is, but it's nice. We need something like this for everything that has to do with the game, because there's so much information out there, and all these around the verse, inside Star Citizen Live, Reverse the Verse, Calling All Devs, all this stuff has so much info, but it's so hard to compile it all into one place and make it easily readable. This is unmatched content. We need this for things like the quantum system. We need this for bug fixing in Star Citizen. We need this for the inventory system. We need this for the professions of the game. Literally just a box for each profession. This would be so helpful. But that's a lot of work. Oh, you're just saying it must have been hard to do. Oh yeah, I agree with that. They should sponsor him then and give him no strings attached. Problem with that is then they'd be on the line for whatever he says if it's wrong. 5 to 6 years as 1 to 2 platform changes. As in like one of these, each of these segments, each of these major tech things. Really looking forward to 3.18. 3.18 is going to be an interesting patch. I'm excited to see what happens with the PTU version of 3.18, just because they have so much testing that they got to do with it, and we're going to see a lot of stuff probably break. Don't see any other company being able to do this without having the pre-alpha playable. Yeah, and that's been a big struggle, right? Making sure that the alpha and the pre-alpha were playable all this time while also trying to build it is surely something that slowed them down a lot with making the game. But I can't say I'm mad about it. You noticed in the XGR racing over the weekend, most of the ships that blew up stayed. Huh. That's interesting. This is less complicated than your checklist to see to leave the house. Yeah, this is like the process my brain goes through when I try to decide when to get out of bed in the morning. Just like check, 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 check. Nah, still gonna sleep. Planned, status unknown, getting out of bed. This is more than average, but that's because the average developer communication is disgusting garbage. I hope rots in hell. I don't know. I think this kind of development will always be niche. Just like with movies, I think a lot of the how-to is going to be kept behind wraps. Most of the companies who make games probably don't want to deal with the stuff that CIG has dealt with to make this happen. They'll all settle for having less funding and a shorter production cycle, as long as that means that they don't have to deal with the people who are playing with their game also criticizing the development process. It's stressful. Not saying that it's undeserved, but it complicates the process, and it might not be worth it for some of these other big companies that are, you know, they're cool with making another game, a remake of a 20-year-old game, or a sequel to a successful game, or even a cool original game. That's not like that doesn't happen, but there are easier ways to do it than what CIG is doing. It is pretty crazy though. Star Citizen wild. I don't know if it's going to succeed. I think it will. I think we're at the point where it's kind of hard for this game not to succeed in some way. They might not be able to They might not be able to hit single shard meshing. They might not even be able to hit dynamic server meshing in a great way, although I'm confident that they can. Regardless, I do think this is going to be a successful space MMO, and it's just wild to be here, to be a part of it, and to see it happening. I am annoyed by the missed dates. I'm annoyed by what seems to be lies very early on in the process, and I'm annoyed by some of the feature creep that we've seen, but at the same time, I want somebody to do this. Feature creep and all. Somebody I would like to do it. I can play space games in other places. I can play MMOs other places. I can play Sims other places, but like, if one company is going to go balls to the wall, I'm glad it was a space game company that's doing it, and I'm happy to see where they go with it. I don't throw any more money at them. I've done my part, and I think anybody else shouldn't feel obligated to throw money, but being here is unmatched experience. I think they should have just done Squadron 42 first, not at the same time. I don't think they would have been able to fund Squadron 42 on its own. Yeah, we're pretty close to PES. We are pretty close. Would CIG have released SC in sequels? I think it would have been, maybe not sequels, but pretty major development patches. Much closer together, and probably nowhere near the scale that they wanted to do. AAA can do what it wants. I won't pay them. I don't like any of the new games. They're all unfinished and badly scripted reskins. You'd rather have SC than Squadron. I think most people would rather have SC, but like, you don't get one without the other anymore. They're definitely tied at the hip. Ifs, buts, and maybes are pointless. This is how it is, and nobody else can do anything like this any other way. Certainly nobody's proven it. And I love how when Starfield first was shown, like, not first, but rather the gameplay recently was shown, and people are like, ooh, Star Citizen, uh-oh. Oh no. It's like, hold up. Different games, buddy. Buddy boy. Like, Starfield will never be able to do the things that Star Citizen wants to. Likewise, Star Citizen will not be able to do the things Starfield wants to. And when I say the things, that's ignoring that one's single player and one's multiplayer. I'm talking Starfield can't get the detail that Star Citizen wants to do. Star Citizen probably can't do the character development that Starfield wants to do. Maybe at some point they will. But like, every game and studio is going to have their strengths, and nobody is developing a game in a way that they can match Star Citizen's strengths, except maybe Star Atlas. But that's pour one out for that. It's simply been a draw the rest of the owl thing since Chris's original pitch in 2015. Completely underestimate the work needed and get the money in 2013. A couple years before that, I thought. Yeah, one is an RPG. Although I feel Star Citizen's going for a bit of an RPG, an MMORPG. There will never be another project like SC. However, SC can become Starfield if they finish all the foundational tech. I do hope we get more projects like SC. I hope that Star Citizen becomes a success and inspires other studios to do the same in other genres and stuff. That would be cool. "2013 was much smaller." Yeah. What are you looking at, Rube? We just went through all of this. This is the path unofficially to dynamic server meshing. It has the details of all of the different services that have been developed with full-on descriptions and better understandings of what they include, how they run into each of the major services, and what each of these services does. This is an amazing overview of the tech going into server meshing, and highly suggested for anybody who wants a better understanding of how this game's going to work. This stuff's crazy. I'll link it in the chat for you right now. All right. right, Sketch. That's a little. I think that's a little. I don't know. That's disregarding a lot of people's hard work. You can't call Starfield a reskin of Witcher or Skyrim when nobody really knows what's gone into it yet. I mean, if anything, I think they're shooting more for something like Morrowind or maybe Oblivion from the way that they've been talking about the game and the development and what they're focusing on. I do think that Starfield is a legitimate good project with some originality to it. And I think they've put a lot of energy behind it. Yeah, I just dropped the link for you, Basic Eagle. One of the big things that SC has is its open delivery date on a completed game. Yeah, so they can keep on going. They can keep on going and throw in some extra stuff. Some people would say that's the worst part. Some people would say that's what makes the game struggle. This weekend, Star Citizen just dropped. I got you. There were a lot of hard-working horses and buggy drivers before the car. Sorry their job didn't make it, but I'm driving it. Yeah, but you're talking about a company that literally led the RPG segment. Like, you can talk about AAA being bad all you want. Bethesda is a company that has helped drive the gaming industry forward. And I think they deserve a little bit of respect for that. Even if CIG sells out in 20 years, they still deserve some respect for what they've done with Star Citizen, with game development, and with this model. I don't think that being so absolute against something just because of a label that's slapped on it is healthy for the industry. You know, I think we should be giving people credit where credit's due. Now, you can point at Mass Effect Andromeda, which came out broken, or Halo Infinite, or Battlefield 2042, or Cyberpunk 2077, but the fact of the matter is we don't really know that much still about Starfield, other than that it's a space game made by Bethesda, and it's set across a wide variety of planets. It's a Bethesda game after all, unless they do it different. People keep saying it's a Bethesda game like that's a bad thing. Can we look up Bethesda Studio? Let's see. In fact, let's just look up some of their other games. Bethesda Fallout 4 scores. %84 on Metacritic. But what about user scores? At the moment, companies make games where they make a lot of money. Yeah, I've been super disappointed with a lot of games lately. Maybe I am too optimistic, but I like to give the companies a chance to show up. Let's see. Bethesda Oblivion scores. Oblivion. The 94% on Metacritic. User score of 8.2. Ooh, Fallout 4 has a bad user score of 5.6. So Oblivion's at an 8.2. Fallout's at a 5.6. Skyrim's got an 8.4. Let's see, what about Morrowind? Morrowind got an 89% with an 8.8 user rating. What about Daggerfall? Daggerfall got an 8.4 user rating. I'm not seeing a Metascore though. Metacritic score. Oh, 94 by Metacritic. Bethesda has more good games than bad. I don't know where this reputation comes from that their games are automatically bad. You just got Star Citizen 2 days ago, and despite the bugs, been loving it. Been binging all your videos. Do you think 4.0 is far out? What are you most looking forward to in the near future? I think 4.0 is, yeah, pretty far out. Next year for sure. I'm most excited for the cargo refactor, I think, though. That's going to change a lot of stuff. Yeah, so Fallout 76, 52%, user rating of 2.8. But, like, guys, are we going to judge a company that has literally changed? I don't know. I mean, you can judge the company by this game, but, like, why is that what everybody does? Why is it that whenever Bethesda comes up, nobody points to the other games that they've done well? Everybody says it's a Bethesda game, so it's probably not going to be good. And then you ask, well, why? What's wrong with Bethesda games? Fallout 76 was bad. But what about all the other games that were great? They had bugs, for sure. They struggled, for sure. But they're all universally still accepted as good games. And I want to say at least the Elder Scrolls games were all games that pushed the industry forward. Oblivion was the first really deep console-based RPG. Skyrim completely changed the way RPGs were done. Morrowind was this crazy open world that I don't know if many other games were doing at the time. Like, they were all pretty solid games. It's all because Fallout 76 and the bad taste that it left. Right. I get that. Fallout 76 was a bad game. They should not have done what they did with that game. But it was an MMO made by an RPG company who's now making an RPG. It's like, there's so much to consider here other than Bethesda bad. It's the same as Blizzard's you have cell phones moments. God, Blizzard. But see, Blizzard's another story. Blizzard has had mistake after mistake after mistake. They've killed off StarCraft. They've killed off Warcraft. They've ruined their relationship with their community base. Bethesda keeps on showing that they're really trying to win people back. And people are just like, no, Fallout 76. Fire old employed and recruit new ones. I mean, it's certainly not the same company that made Morrowind. But if they use it as inspiration, that's at least something. Like, it's kind of like the same thing that people say about Chris Roberts. Oh, Chris Roberts, that's that guy that tried to make that game that didn't make it out in time because he took too long and Microsoft had to take it from him. And it's like, yeah, if you only look at the first message about Chris Roberts and that people don't like, oh yeah, that's the guy that tried to make the movies and didn't really make it. It's the guy that started Star Citizen and let it take 10 years to be finished. And it's like, well, yeah, but look at all the things that Chris Roberts has helped do that's done a lot for the industry and the game. I think it's worth considering that there were both good and bad things about these things. True, but Bethesda bad. Bethesda games are broken for a year until patched. Todd Howard oversells things and gets caught lying. Again, I will keep coming back to this. Despite what these things are, the games are still considered to be good even at launch. They have bugs and problems, but they are still foundationally good games. And if Bethesda can make a foundationally good game and get picked up by a company like Microsoft, who is very scrutinous about their money, who has a huge gaming budget to work with and a lot of competition to deal with, I don't think they want to see a game like this fail when they know that it's going to be one of the main things going forward for them in the new generation of gaming. Microsoft is not playing around anymore. I honestly think that, like, there are quite a few things to take into account considering that they're working on this game. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I don't think it's going to blow anybody away. At best, I think it'll be an 80% score average space game. But why in the f***ing world are people not excited for that? I can't get over it. Why are people not excited for space games? Answer me that, Mrs. Tomato. Aren't we all space game fans here? It blows my mind. I want to be able to talk to people about space games and get excited for it. It's fun. It's good fun. Sorry, that's my emotional moment. Every company has a cyberpunk moment. Oh God. The old cyberpunk moment. Yeah. Every game should try and really avoid having one of those moments. Almost every company these days wants to take shortcuts to make the most money of the smallest efforts. That's just how it is. Doesn't matter how good a company was back in the day. That's fair. That's completely fair. See, now that I can get behind. Maybe they are going to load it with microtransactions and rip us off and ruin the game in that way. I get that. I'll subscribe to that. Speaking of cargo refactor earlier, do you think they will change prices at all or use quantum more to help us traders? I don't know. I do hope that they figure out a way to bolster the trade economy with quantum and the cargo refactor, but I don't know. I don't know how well they'll do, or if that'll happen all at once. I think you have emotions about a business transaction. I expect those who have lied about finishing things then quitting will lie about it being finished. I'm not loyal to disloyal people. My friend, we're talking about Star Citizen here. I mean, if we're talking about things being stated as being true and then not coming true, that's a hard argument to keep following Star Citizen so closely. Like, let's just for a second, just to jog everybody's memory, because I don't think anybody should forget this. How do I spell? I can't remember how to freaking spell things. Not to hate on CIG. This is important to remember because we need to remember that CIG can make mistakes like this, and we should always take things with a grain of salt and hold them accountable if they do. But like, this was the roadmap in 2016 for Star Citizen. Oh my gosh. Open the picture. Load the picture. Come on. Have I tried No Man's Sky? I have. I want to jump back into it soon. So they did a whole thing on this. What's wrong? Is YouTube not working? Oh. So they did a whole thing on this. The roadmap back in 2016, just to remind everyone. Okay, hold on. The expectations were real. They were telling us that salvage was coming in 3.2. Farming was coming in 3.3. Jump points were coming after 3.3 with the Crucible, the Abandoned Merchantman. Like, I mean, mistakes were made. Not to give every other game company an okay to go, because I do think that other companies are more distrustful with the way that they promote their stuff. I'm just saying that getting things wrong in this industry isn't enough for me to write off a company unless they keep doing it over and over. Cautiously optimistic, that's the way to be. That's all I ask. That's all I want. Cautious optimistic conversations. I'm just really tired of trying to talk about Starfield and constantly hearing about the company that makes it and not the game being made. It's like when people only talk about Chris Roberts when you bring up Star Citizen. He gets you sketch. He's pointing out how many broken promises Star Citizen has had. I'm loving Star Citizen and dissing AAA. You might be misunderstanding me. No, what I'm saying is that AAA suffers from some of the same issues that Star Citizen does. Like, Squadron 42 was supposed to be released like 3 times. Literally, Star Citizen, they told us we were going to have quantum. The quantum economy was going to be added last year. That was the goal. Tony Z said, the goal is to add this by the end of the year. The end of the year came and went, and we didn't hear anything about it. They didn't tell us. It's not a lie, but it is an omission of communication, and it's perceived as a lie by the people who don't know what's going on. In the same way that if a game gets delayed, it's perceived as a lie by the people who don't know what's going on. It happens in many different ways, and I think CIG suffers from it too. Yeah, my first impression of No Man's Sky wasn't good either. I put it down for like 3 years. Wow, this thing dies so fast. They never said they were done, and they never quit AAA's a lie. I mean, they did say Squadron 42 was playable. They said that that developers could play through Squadron 42 from start to finish. What was that? 2017? 2018? Let's talk about it when it has some gameplay to talk about. Starfield? I mean, that's what I did. I've been wanting to talk about Starfield for 2 years. Literally. Starfield reveal trailer. This came out. When this trailer came out, I was so freaking pumped. 4 years ago. I was so excited. And then I realized we would have to wait until there was gameplay. And then they revealed gameplay 2 weeks ago. And it's just been like... Honestly, it reminds me of talking about Star Citizen. It's just not been fun. You're super hyped. You can't wait to check it out for yourself. Hey, you know, there you go. No one speaks for me but me. What I'm saying is AAA is garbage that lies and quits, and Star Citizen never quits and never lied about being done. That's what matters to me. Okay. They learned, I think, how future features releases are better articulated, but it took a lot of mistakes. Yeah, it took a ton of mistakes. Oh my gosh. It took years and years of CIG not realizing that they just couldn't do the year-long roadmap. Like, they would put out a roadmap and they'd be like, this is what we're doing 4 quarters out. And for 5 years in a row, they were like 80% of the way wrong with that. I'm glad that they shortened the roadmap for that. It's everywhere. It all has fine print. We gotta apply our experience as gamer instead of trusting ads. First time chatter, long time viewer. Thoughts on the progression of Squadron 42 and the 24 and 25 window of release? Jimmy, thanks for viewing, and thanks for chatting this time. I would be more inclined to think that Squadron is coming in 2025. Just to, like, spare myself the pain. I think I would say at the beginning of this year, I thought 24 was a reasonable... Like, I definitely was thinking... like, spring of 24. Now I can only hope for holiday of 24, to be honest. Great way to think about it, I would say, is to, like, look at the gameplay we get in Star Citizen and then push that gameplay forward like 3 to 4 quarters and be like, is that good enough for Squadron 42 release? If the answer is no, then we're probably not close. We can talk about it, but I'm not buying it till I see that it's done. What are you worried about? What if I'm wrong? What does it matter? It's not like we're pushing for Starfield pre-sale. It's just my opinion. Not at all, man. I'm just saying how I feel about it. How I feel about it is that I'm tired of having a conversation about the game, and the conversation's never about the game itself. Because who is it that said that? As Mesa said, we shouldn't talk about a game until they have gameplay to be talked about, right? And they showed us gameplay. So I want to jump in and talk about gameplay with people, but it constantly goes back to, well, it's Bethesda. Well, it's going to suck. Oh, it's going to be glitchy. Oh, there's no point. And, like, that's the same thing that happens when we talk about Star Citizen. Oh, well, it's taken so long. Oh, it's so expensive. Wow, they're funding it with ships. Oh, it's pay to win. Oh, you guys are a cult. Like, the parallel is what I'm trying to point out. That we shouldn't do the same thing that people do to us just because we don't like the thing that they're talking about. Everything is able to stand on its own 2 feet, and they've released a gameplay trailer of the game that I think it's reasonable to have conversations about now. That's my only point. I'm not saying that you're wrong, or that you shouldn't believe what you believe, or that you shouldn't say what you're saying. I'm just responding as my own point of view. You didn't say you weren't buying it, you just want to get even more info. No, I get you. The whole seamless landing, or lack thereof, how much of a planet is explorable. See that, but that's what I'm saying, Mesa. Like, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to talk about. When I bring it up, I want people to be like, does it even matter that there are 1,000 planets? It's like, they named this goal of 100 systems, which Star Citizen has always also called their goal, and it's like, well, is Star Citizen's 100 systems going to be worth it? And if so, would Starfield's? I don't think Starfield's would, to be honest. But I haven't actually had a conversation about that yet, because it always gets sidetracked. Remember the exploit in Skyrim where you can put a basket on a shopkeep's head and rob them blind? My favorite was the glitch in Oblivion, where you could keep replicating, I think it was either lockpicks or paintbrushes, and you could put them in the air and they would float, and they'd be like stairs, and you could basically just walk up into the sky. This is ridiculous. I think Starfield has a great gameplay potential. I'm really excited for a single-player RPG. That's what I'm pumped for. I'm probably overly excited for Starfield because I just want to see more space games made in general. And the best way to get more space games made is for a AAA studio to make a space game that people like. Once that happens, then everybody wants to make space games. And then we start to see indie devs that come in and make even cooler types. It's like we wouldn't have gotten Valheim if things like The Witcher or Skyrim or the Souls games weren't popular, right? We didn't get sci-fi RPGs because Mass Effect kind of died. We aren't seeing more cyberpunk projects come out because 2077, actually, I think it's too early to call that, but like, if one game is successful in a genre, more games would pop up in that genre, right? So having a space game be successful is something I just get super excited for because I want to see more space. I like space. Screw you, Earth. I like space. It is single player. You'd probably never visit all the systems. Right. Like, what is it? What are you going to be looking for? Should let both sides royal rumble it out in the comments. It's good for the algorithm. Hey, that's what happens. And whenever I do something Starfield related, it just goes to that. The space FPS boundary, I've seen a couple clips of it. It looks pretty interesting. But I haven't gotten to play it. It's like Tarkov in space, people call it. People just want a complete game, which is hard to come by these days. Amen, Distinct Red. I can get on board with that. And on that, in that vein, I completely agree with what is being said in the comments. AAA studios have gotten lazy. They got used to that Assassin's Creed Far Cry format. They got used to simple ways of putting monetization into games and sticking to like basic molds of what a game should be. Everybody loved to hate on Battle Royale, but the fact of the matter is that PUBG made a new type of gameplay popular. They didn't invent it, but they brought it as an innovation to a already known genre. I was talking to Level Cap the other day, and he thinks that the FPS genre is just going to change completely. He thinks that arena shooters and team-based shooters and that kind of stuff is a thing of the past in the same way that Unreal Tournament became a thing of the past with that stuff. Things like Battle Royale and free-for-all and more expansive environments with more creativity are what's going to be leading going forward. And honestly, that's cool. I love to see that stuff. And it's sad that we haven't seen that in AAA a lot lately. So I could agree with you with that. Deadluck Archives, thank you so much for the super chat. Fractured Space was a great capital ship MOBA that failed. Would probably be better now. Capital ship MOBA. That's interesting. That is a very interesting sounding concept. How does that work? Deus Ex. Honestly, I play a Deus Ex song every single stream starts up. Deus Ex is, I don't know if they could bring that back. I was really, really hoping for it though. That was kind of my go-to RPG in the 2010s. It was either Deus Ex or Witcher 3. You want good games to be successful. Bad games in a genre are bad for a genre. Good games are good for a genre, in my view. Agreed. People shit on Bethesda for 76. Starfield is going to be great for the space gamers community and the modding community. Maybe the over 100 planets are for exploration or even mods. Imagine that. For mods, it would be cool, but then you would think, couldn't players just create them with mods? Can you imagine SC on Unreal Engine 5? To be honest, it'd probably break the engine. What's a complete game you personally enjoy this long drawn out development? Things are up to change. Yeah, it's hard to describe a complete game nowadays. You've heard good things about Witcher. CG Project Red makes Witcher series. I think many people are explorers at heart. Having 100 system gives you a feeling of the vastness of space. It could be, yeah, for those people. But again, it's a single player game. So it's kind of... It's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, but like somebody else might be doing this in their house somewhere else. How special does that make the exploration feel, you know? If you enjoy long drawn out development. Yeah, 76 was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible release. They deserved what they got for that. But I don't think that should be what defines the company. I think that should be remembered for sure. And we should keep the fire lit under Bethesda's feet to remember, hey, you know, you're on watch. But I think they recognize that at this point. Like, the industry's changed a lot since 76. These game companies out here getting crucified for bad releases now. Ooh, Diablo Immortal. Yeah, I've heard about that. I've heard bad things about that. That's another case of Blizzard consistently doing bad things for the industry. What SC is missing and may never have is the sense of discovering something new. Yeah, SC will... I think the things that are new that you'll discover will be lesser. They're not going to be planets or moons or species or anything like that, but you will find cool areas, resource deposits, maybe hidden pirate bases, maybe clues to some lore artifacts, things that definitely have value to them. But that whole idea of discovering something that nobody ever has, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen with Star Citizen. Obviously, you will walk places that people have never walked because the planets are so big, but you know. Hey, Nightcob, showed up late and you're deep into the meat of the convo. Just wanted to say really enjoy your effort and your perspective on the development. Doing a great job. I'd like to thank you and actually give everybody a thanks, because I'm gonna wrap up the stream here. We did the whole overlook and had some conversation afterward. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this stuff, and we got a little distracted, but maybe we'll do more of these streams where we just sit and chat. They're good conversations, and I like when I get to be passionate with you guys and nobody gets angry at me. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be a little colorful. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. I'm going to have some dinner and relax and get ready to move into our place tomorrow. The next time you see me stream, I should finally be in our house, in the actual studio, in the place where we plan on just finally living a real life. We've been waiting 4 years for this, so we're super pumped, and tomorrow might be the day, and we're really looking forward to it. All right, Curtis, I'll catch you later. And everybody else, I'll see you all later. Thank you so much for coming and watching this stream. I hope this was informational. I hope you learned something new. I hope that server meshing maybe makes a little bit more sense to you, just a teensy bit. Any aspect of this, if I taught you something new on it, then it was a success. And hopefully the info that you learned, you can also spread to other people so that we all can start to understand what the actual heck is going on behind the scenes with all this. Stream is lagging. Oh, gosh. Please stop lagging. Come on. It's just the closing. All right, I think we're out of internet for the month. But anyways, guys, I know that I know you know I'm saying bye. So without further ado, everybody, have a wonderful week. I'll see you all on Wednesday for another little special stream. Make sure to check me out on Discord or on Twitter to get a better idea of what's going on Wednesday, because we're doing something fun. We got something planned for all of the streams for the next couple weeks. So stay tuned. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great week, everybody.